I think when I posted this photo yesterday, that was kind of the interesting thing, where you really see the scale of these new 2-ounce alcohol inks. Now, the idea, the concept, as I mentioned, is really for people that want to take their alcohol ink art to the next level. People that maybe have already do it, right? If you're artists and you're already creating with this new 2-ounce side is the dream, right? Because you're getting pretty much 4 times the amount of ink that you would get in a small bottle. Because this is a test concept, the palette is limited to start out with, right? There are 11 colors. So we have Gumball, Crimson, Ember. Now these are not new colors, right? Here's the little guys. These are colors that already exist in the line, but they are new in this 2-ounce bottle. So Gumball, Crimson, Ember, Dandelion, Moss, Mojito, Laguna, we get down to Monsoon, and I'll show you the swatches in a minute. Glacier, Vineyard, Pitch Black. So from a color perspective, right? So that's 11 colors. Then there's Snowcap Mixative. Now, Snowcap Mixative is not a traditional alcohol ink. It is a mixative that is designed to mix with these inks. It is a white, which will make these kind of creamy, dreamy, opaque, okay, colorants. And they're great for creating more of that wispy, dreamy look, but also on black substrates. That's when you want to use mixatives. And then we have the alloys. Now, the alloys, we also have metallic mixatives, but we launched alloys probably now a couple of years ago, maybe 2019, I think. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But alloys really are a high quality metallic that is designed to work with alcohol inks. So unlike mixatives, which mix with the alcohol inks, alloys are designed to break apart and become fragmented metallic. This is a leafing metallic, so it is much shinier, much more vibrant and vivid than the mixatives are. And if you want to learn more about the basics of alcohol ink, what is a mixative, what is an alloy, I encourage you to go to my website, timholtz.com, type alcohol ink in the little search bar in the top, and you will see alcohol ink demos. There's a series part 1 and part 2. I encourage you to watch that because it will take you from the very beginning of what alcohol inks are, what are mixatives, what are alloys, different substrates. Today, it's just going to be play day. It's going to be some of my favorite techniques and why I want the larger bottles and how I want to work with them, okay? The alloys also come in smaller bottles, but just for the sake of the photos, to fit them in, I just put in the big guys there, right? So that's what we have to start. Now, blending solution, right? Blending solution, this is the same size bottle. So if you're familiar with blending solution, there's kind of your comparison from your alcohol ink. It still holds that 2-ounce fluid, okay? Blending solution, believe it or not, there is also a mini, which some people asked about that. And this, we only did it in this mini size because maybe you're traveling around and you want to take your inks with you, and we'll talk about storage next before we get into the demo. So storage. If you're familiar with the storage tin, here's the alcohol ink storage tin. I'll just set it on the table because it's much easier to open up with 2 hands, okay? So this guy is what it looks like. It holds your alcohol inks. It's got that little tray in the bottom, so if you're taking out certain bottles, your things don't move around. So you can fill up your tin with your mini alcohol inks, and that's really why we did the blending solution in that size, because there were several makers that said, oh, I want to take my alcohol inks and I'd like to be able to have a blending solution for on the go, okay? So let's talk about logistics of, well, what does it mean for these guys? There is no specific storage tin coming out for these. However, in my true style, I had to figure out a way around that, a workaround. So I did. Of course I did. So this is the Distress Spray storage tin. Okay, this is designed for the sprays, the 2-ounce sprays. And I'm like, well, hey, this kind of looks like a spray. It should fit, similar bottle. And believe it or not, it does. Let me set this down. It will fit into those little compartments. But here's what I kind of discovered. These bottles are a bit squishier. See how they're squishier than a spray. A spray is a harder plastic. So when you fill this up, if you use this little insert, yes, you can fill it with all of these. But once I filled it with these big bottles, because they're squishy, it seemed like it really gripped them, and it made it very difficult to just pull out the colors. I almost had to like set it on the table, hold the other colors, and pop out the bottle. So what I did, and what I would suggest for storage if you're looking for a tin, is to get the spray tin, reach in, right? Just take your fingers, squeeze this, and just pull out this little tray insert. It's just a little, there you go, little piece of plastic. Get rid of that, okay? And this will allow you to take your inks. I'll just start loading it up now. Move this off to the side. You can put your colors in this tin. It will hold 12 bottles. So if you're gonna need that for like your alloys, and you might need another tin, right, to use for other things. But you'll see that the nice thing is it holds 12. It will still close, no problem, okay? And now you have a storage tin for this. And what I like about not having the insert is, as you can see, I can just grab the colors and put them back. And you'll see, I mean, you might say, okay, Tim, well, I'm gonna still keep the insert because I get it. We can go right ahead, but you'll probably quickly decide, okay, this isn't gonna work. So if you are interested in the 2 ounce, or you're getting them, or you have them and you're looking for a place to store them, that's really what I would suggest, is just taking the spray tin and removing the insert, and there you go, okay? So that is a storage solution. Again, I was reading a lot of comments yesterday once we announced that they're now available to the whole marketplace on a whole. It got a lot of people excited. Some of you had seen them before, some of you haven't seen them, so it could be new, but I'll tell you something else that, and I've said this in many, many videos, right? Anytime I talk about a new product release, and I think sometimes people believe me, Mario and I joke about this. Let me get this putty off of my table. There you go. Some people believe me, some people don't, but this just shows the power of people. It really is. So one of the things that, as a maker in the alcohol ink world, this color, and again, if you followed me with alcohol inks or ideology, and many makers will agree with this, there is a color in the line that I love to use for the ultimate grunge, right? And that color is called Mushroom. Mushroom is an amazing alcohol ink color. We use it for so many things, but it's a dingy color, right? It's a muddy color. It doesn't have any, it's not these beautiful, vibrant colors. It's a muddy color. And so when Ranger was testing this out, they wanted the palette to be very limited. Okay, they're like, we don't want to go big with all this, or we're just going to limit this. And you'll notice that there are no browns or muddy colors in that initial lineup. And I'm like, but guys, like, I love Mushroom. It's my favorite. I use it all the time. Like, yeah, Tim, we want to stick with just basic colors to start out with. We'll see how it goes, and then we could possibly look at expanding colors moving forward. But yesterday, after I post, there were so many of you that showed your support for Mushroom, where you were asking about Mushroom, you were having conversations in the comments. I got a bazillion DMs about, no Mushroom, how do you not have Mushroom? It's your favorite color. So I shared that with one of the owners of Ranger. I actually called him up. It was Friday. He was already off work. And I'm like, okay, listen, I know we're just launching this, but I'm telling you, that color that I wanted, there's more than just me that wants it. There's a lot of people that want it. And I really want you to kind of reconsider that. And this is what's so great about Ranger, and being a US manufacturer, he can react to that. And he agreed over the phone that this is in the works. They reached out to Taylor, so a shout out to Taylor, who it does all the graphics for Ranger. She did a label. Again, this was Friday. They were already off. Ranger was closed. She logged in, did the label, and this is going in the works right away. So first thing on Monday, it's going in the works. Now, does that mean it's available now? No. Don't want you to think that Mushroom is available like the rest of them. I just want you to know that they heard all of us now, and Mushroom is coming. It is a color that will be added, probably going to be a while, but it's in the works. And I say a while because I don't know how long it takes to go into production, but they are going to start production of this next week. So shout out for that. Really, a thank you to Ranger, because again, it really shows that, you know, sometimes, and this is not to say that they don't want to listen to me, it's just saying that sometimes as a designer, you're very close to your product, and you have favorites that maybe on the books or in the data don't really kind of resonate with them, where they're like, well, I know you like Mushroom, but it's not one of the best selling colors. And I'm like, but there is a whole group of makers that love it. So I'm just excited to know that these are available, those 2 ounce available now. This one is coming. It is in the works. So as soon as it's available, I will definitely share that on social media, but no definite date. Just know that they're starting it when they get back in the office on Monday. So I'm really excited. So thank you guys for the support of Mushroom, and know that yes, it is coming in a 2 ounce, because if the label exists, it will exist. I know. That's so good. I'm really excited. Okay, let's get into the colors. We'll talk about the swatches of color, and then we'll get into doing some demos. So yeah, thanks for showing the love of Ranger. I just told him, like, that's really exciting. And yeah, there were a couple people, even, you know, some of my makers, and, you know, Paula, I saw like the whole thing. I'm like, you don't know, I'm already taking care of it, but you definitely helped support that whole, I don't know, the whole campaign, I guess, for Mushroom. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about the colors. Now, swatches, I did all of my swatches on Yupo, and if you're not familiar with the surfaces, again, I encourage you to go back and watch that basics video. But Yupo is a synthetic paper. I like to do alcohol ink swatches on something synthetic because it's going to hold the color on the surface versus doing swatches on, say, glossy cardstock, right? Even though we have alcohol ink cardstock, which is glossy paper, this is a porous paper, and a lot of times your colors don't remain true as a swatch on glossy, okay? So I just cut up some Yupo, and here's what I did. I just took some of the color. So for example, this is the first color, this is Gumball, and I dripped some of this on, and I used some isopropyl alcohol. So you'll see during the demos that a lot of the times I'll work with 91%. You can do 91% or higher isopropyl alcohol. I normally just kind of decant this in just a small little needle tip because you don't really need much. But you could also use blending solution. And if you're interested in learning the differences between a 91% isopropyl and blending solution, again, I'll link those videos in the description below this YouTube video, and you can check them out because there is a difference. But if you only have blending solution, you can do your swatches that way. But you want to use either one of these. You could even use both if you wanted to move the color. So when I do the swatch, I'll drip a little bit of isopropyl down on the Yupo. I'll take a little bit of that color, and then I'll move it around. You can move it around physically, do it that way. You can take an alcohol ink blower. Now the blower is just a large bulb with a big nozzle that when you squeeze it, it just puffs air, and it's very sensitive when you have that fluid ink to move it around. So you can take this and you can move that color around. When you're using it, you just want to use little puffs of air. You don't want to do this because that will literally blow the ink all over the place, like a firework, okay? So, and I did that yesterday. That's why Mario's laughing, because I'm like, ooh, let's go. So it's just little puffs of air. The other nice thing, there are other things. This was inspired by a camera lens cleaner, right? Where people say, oh, I have one for my camera. This is just a larger bulb, a different intake, right? So it actually dispenses more air, but if that's all you have, the other one, go for it and use it. But I do encourage you, if you're into moving inks, this is a little safer than a straw. I know some people still love to move ink around with a straw. It's okay to do it if you're very safe about it, because alcohol inks need to be used in a well-ventilated area. That means if you're in your studio, have a window open, have a fan going. You don't want to inhale the fumes without air circulating. If you're an alcohol ink artist, I know a lot of them wear even respirators or masks because that is their full-time gig. So if you're interested in learning more about that, again, the alcohol ink art community will share a lot of the safety stuff too that other artists use. Another way to move ink is with a simple hairdryer, right? Now, a hairdryer, you want something that actually has more of a fan speed, that doesn't have a lot of heat. So I don't use a heat tool like an embossing gun on alcohol ink, because the problem is this is a solvent ink that dries quickly. And if you go in with an embossing gun, chances are you're drying the ink before you have a chance to move it. Now you can use a standard hairdryer. This one I got, this is just like a Conair. It had like a brush attachment. I guess it was like a styling brush hairdryer. I just discarded the brush thing because I like the fact that I can use it in a different way. It's just, to me, it's just easier to use it like an embossing gun than having the hairdryer. I just got this on Amazon. You can find it at Walmart, different places, but I like that it has 2 different speeds. So I just kind of use it on low to move it around. So that's how I did the swatch. So I started there. I inked just half of it in that way. So you can see with the color that alcohol inks, because they are translucent dyes, their saturation, their intensity depends on how you, as the maker, apply them. How many layers you put over the top, how much isopropyl and or blending solution you use to blend that color. And so once I moved this around and I got it dry, okay, on half, I stand up my Yupo, I went in with my bottle of isopropyl, I hosed it down on half, all the way down the paper, and I let it drip. And the reason I like to do this is because to really appreciate the color, you want to see the levels it can achieve, right? Because sometimes if I was only to swatch this, I would look at this and go, well, gosh, that almost looks a bit more coral or a bit muddy, and I wouldn't think it's a bright pink. But then when you add that isopropyl and or blending solution, you start to pull out the undertones. And I think that that's one of the features I love about Ranger alcohol ink, and I know a lot of artists will agree, is that these colors, these are not just right off the shelf colors, okay? All of the colors in the line are a combination of dyes that the chemists create to create this color. They take all these different colorants to make and achieve this. And what's nice about that is these undertones, these surprises, like that little hint of purple that shows up, you'll see a little bit of blue. Each one of these colors have these unique undertones that not every alcohol ink brand has. I'm not saying it's the only one that does, but I will say if you ask a lot of artists and you're like, oh, you know, what do you like about this? Some people may say, well, I like this brand, like let's just say Copic, because the colors are more true, all right? But I like Ranger because when you're moving it around on your work, you start getting these surprising colors with just a limited palette. So that's a cool thing about a swatch, is seeing the difference. And so I'll just take you through each color. This next one, crimson, right? Look at how dark that red is. I mean, that is crimson. And the more you layer it, the darker it gets, almost black or brown. But look at how it can become these really subtle, almost like a salmon color, really. It has a really interesting undertone to it because it brings out some of that pink in it, but it still maintains its color integrity. And that's what I like about the drip. Because if you are planning to move colors together, you want to not only know the saturation level, but also the wispiness, right? All right, then we get into Ember. That's an orange color, right? And Ember really reminds me of just a very, very deep, deep color. Not as dirty as Crackling Campfire, but definitely a darker orange than, say, Sunset Orange, which is in the alcohol ink palette, or Valencia. And then the cool thing about this, if you look at it, like, again, you'll see those peach undertones, you'll see just those deeper tones. All of those things really have to do with how much alcohol. And these inks will always react with solvent. So if you wanted to, let's say, do a dark, a mid-range, and a light, you could essentially go back in with isopropyl a second time after this dries and even get a lighter blend of that color. So you can do swatches however you want, but I think they're really important. This one, this is Dandelion. And you can see here, really true yellow, very true yellow. But when you layer it, it almost has a mustardy effect, right? Because you're getting those darker tones. But when you wash it out, it almost has, I mean, I think in terms of distress, almost has a lemonade effect, right? Because you're getting really, really bright colors. And swatches are so important because, you know, they really try to match a color to the label, but it can only show so much. I mean, this is Moss, which is, again, one of the favorites, inspired by a classic, which was Juniper, that used to be in the Adirondack line. The only difference between the original Adirondack alcohol inks and this is Adirondack was a brand name, and that brand name has been gone. So some of the colors are the same, but some of the colors got retired, and so we brought Moss back. But look at that. So you see it, and you're like, oh, it's a really light green. Well, it is. It is a light green. You can see that's the color. But when you put it on heavy, look at that. Holy moly, look at that green. Really cool. That's almost rustic wilderness, right? But look when we started to drip it. Look what's happening here. Hello there, undertone. There's a little bit of brown showing up, some blues, some cool striations. And that is the thing that unless you make a swatch, you don't even know the true potential of that bottle that's in your hand. And these are the same inks that are in these, right? So if you don't have the big bottle and you're like, oh, you know, I can't do that. Sure you can. You can swatch the same thing with your little guys. It's going to work. This is Mojito. Again, beautiful green. You can see that when it's saturated, it's much darker than the label, right? When you're layering, because translucent, 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 it eventually becomes a deeper tone, but it could never be a different shade, right? It can never be this green of Mojito could never be dark like Moss. It just can't. You can add layers, but you're never going to get this deep tone because it's always going to have that yellow. Even if you layer it to its most intense version, it's always going to have a yellow undertone versus like what Moss has. So that's why there's always different colors. A beautiful one. This is a stunner. This is Laguna. Look at that, right? So you have that beautiful teal turquoise, but then of course, as you thin it out, you're getting really vibrant, bright blues. You're getting little wisps of purple in there. and you're also getting some dark kind of deep green lines in there. Really fascinating. I know this is another favorite. This is Monsoon, definitely one of my favorites. Monsoon has the ability to create really deep, almost black finishes because it's so saturated with colorant, but it also, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but you see that little bit of brown showing up? Monsoon has some very dirty undertones. That's what's making it that deep blue. So when you thin it out, you're going to get some clean, nice, almost navy blue, but you're also going to get these really funky kind of dirty spots that show up. They don't always show up on the edges. I don't know if you could see here, but there's some little bit of brown in there. Always, always, always fascinating. This one's bright. This is Glacier. I mean, look at how vivid and bright that is. Almost kind of blueprint sketch, right? Again, I think in the world of distress, but it's that really beautiful, vivid blue of Glacier. This one, Vineyard, a great purple. I mean, gosh, look at that color. Look at how dark that is. Again, I love that saturation because when you thin it out, it just looks like you're using probably 3 or 4 different shades of purple to create this effect, but you're not. That's where you're getting kind of like that mauve look, a little bit of lilac, a little bit of lavender in there, and then you get those deep purples and then even some blues. So really interesting for Vineyard. I know this one is a favorite of many, many artists, and there are a lot of black alcohol inks on the market. Most of them are what I would say is a true black, meaning when you thin it out, you're going to get gray. You're going to get different tones of gray. But pitch black, not the case. Pitch black is this crazy chameleon. I mean, shut the front door. Seriously. So yes, is it pitch black? Of course it is. Look at that. You put it on and it is a black background. But you add blending solution or isopropyl and sit back and watch what happens. You get everything. You're getting bright blues, you're getting purples, you're getting deep navies, you're getting that really hip pop of Glacier, you're getting almost a mushroom vibe, you're getting browns, you're getting orange, you're getting that latte tone in there, and all of that is coming from black. So as I mentioned, when Ranger does the colors, they're not just taking black dye off the shelf. They're saying, okay, we'll make black, but we're going to make black with a bunch of different colors to ultimately achieve black. But then those undertones, which is to me what I loved about alcohol ink when I started, right? Alcohol ink, the fascination were these undertones. And that's why it wasn't like, well, just pick, you know, traditional red or traditional yellow. Create those colors so we get these surprises. And like I said, some artists love this, you know, this X factor, and other artists, they don't like that. They want it to be like, hey, if I put black down and I thin it out, I want it to be, you know, black or gray throughout. It's totally up to you as to what you're looking for. You have to find the medium that's going to be right for your artistic style. Then we go into a mixative. So Snowcap. So this swatch I just am showing on black, right? Because all of these colors are translucent, but the mixatives and alloys are opaque. So these are the ones that you have to shake. They have a mixing ball because there is a pigment and a solvent in there. When you put this on black, you can see, and again, this is thinned with isopropyl, it creates that very ethereal, very ghosty, wispy look. And you can use it just by itself, but it's really designed to be mixed with color. And mixed doesn't necessarily mean stirred in a cup. It just means put some of this on there, put some of your color, put some of your isopropyl or blending solution, move it around, and you will get a pastel version of this. The mixative, and why we did this in this big bottle, it will allow you to use colors on darker substrates. Because if you just put, for example, gumball on black, it would not show up. Because translucent pink over black is just the black is going to show through the color. But if you have it with some of the mixative, you're going to get that color to show through. And again, if you want to learn more about all of this, you can check out the videos because I really go into detail about mixing colors. These are the alloys. So here you're going to see when the light hits it exactly what I'm talking about. This metallic is ridiculous. Okay, so here's what you need to know about alloys, especially if you're new to alcohol inks or if you've been using them so long that you're kind of used to your own little rhythm. Here's the thing to know about alloys. Alloys, because they are a leafing metallic, okay, these also need to be shaken, but it is a leafing metallic. It is different metallic than what are in the metallic mixatives. They have a different color name, they have different everything. Let me see if I can find one. There we go. So metallic mixative. So metallic mixative gold and gilded alloy, it's a completely different metallic. Mixatives are going to mix in there. Alloys, because of that leafing metallic, they're going to break apart. They're going to fragment. But because of the sensitivity and the fact that I wanted this to be so vivid and vibrant, it is important that in order to get this to bond to its surface, you need to use some blending solution. It doesn't mean you have to use only blending solution. So for the artists that really work with isopropyl most of the time and you move it around, that is great. But just make sure that when you're squirting some isopropyl down, you may want to give a couple of shakes of blending solution in addition to the alloy, because this, you can see from the yellow, has resin in it, right? Isopropyl, translucent, has no resin. This resin is what is going to act as like that bonder. It's going to allow this metallic to bond to the surface. Now, anytime you put a lot of pigment on a substrate, if you go in and rub this, you're going to get some fluming, but very minimal. You see that? And the reason it's minimal is because this is done with blending solution. If you only do this with isopropyl, and I say this because maybe you've tried alloys, right? And you only work with this and you put it on your work and you touch it and you're like, oh, it's coming off. It's because you didn't use any blending solution to help bond that pigment. These colors are just amazing though. Take a look at sterling, a beautiful silver, right? And you can see that wherever it's heavier, it's going to be almost like almost like leafing. It really does have that beautiful metallic quality. And this is by itself. Trust me, they work totally different when you put them with ink. I'll show you some samples. But I would say one of my favorites in the alloy is Foundry. And it's one of those colors that when you look at the labels, you're like, huh, it looks pretty similar. Silver and silver. Now, if you pay a little close attention, you'll see this is a little dingier, if you will. And what Foundry is Foundry is pretty much a combo of these guys, right? A ratio that obviously the chemist created, but take a look at what Foundry does, right? Can you see it? Can you see that sometimes you're going to get a little bit of silver and sometimes you're going to get like these interesting pops of gilded, a little bit of gold in there? They don't separate. It's blended into one color. That's what Foundry is. But unlike just having a traditional silver or just gold, see, now you see it. When you see all three of them, you're like, what? Come on. That's the beauty. This is almost like platinum. And what's cool about Foundry is depending on what colors you pair it with, that's what's going to bring out more silver or more of the gold in it. But ultimately, it just has this incredible vibe. It's just so good. So that is why, because there are other alloys. Like we didn't do all the alloys in these 2 ounce, but those were the three. They're like, we're going to just do gilded and sterling because it's silver and gold. And I'm like, oh, come on. And I mean, I lucked out because they were like, okay, we're going to round it to 15. But I do love that. Probably should have campaigned more for mushroom, right, Mario? But I was already done on that. But it's coming, so we're good to go. It's in the works. Okay, so that's just a little run through of swatches. Now let's get into playtime. And as we get into playtime, I'll do my best to watch the chat. It is a Q&A demo, so now that I did my little spiel, I will go in. Oh, see? I saw it. Casey's like, I would have said I didn't need Foundry. It's funny, because Mario was the same way, actually. He's like, hey, these are the same. I'm like, oh, no. Visually, yes, they're very similar. But what they do, wow, totally different. You can only do so much with a label, right? Okay.
Yeah, but then when you showed me last night,
yeah, then
like,
right.
Wow,
as soon as I showed him just what I showed you, it's like, okay, wow. All right, let's get set up to ink. I'm just going to move some stuff out of the way if you guys don't mind. So I've got my tin. I'm going to just put this back here of the 2 ounce. I've got my other tin. I've got some inks. We also have alcohol pearls. Again, if you want to learn about those, check out the videos. There's so many videos on my website. If you're ever looking for inspiration, if you're like, oh, what's the difference between distress ink and oxide? How do I use a spray? What's an alloy? What's an alcohol ink? If you just type that in the search bar on timholtz.com, it's pretty much going to pop up some type of video that I've shared on that very question. So it's just a great resource that's always there. All right, so I've got my glass media mat down. You can work on whatever protective surface, but if you have a media mat, this part right here, this removable craft mat, right? We want to take this off because what's going to happen is this is a fabric layered over this silicone backing, and the alcohol inks will stain this. It won't ruin, I mean, it would ruin it because it's stained, but it would still work as a non-stick mat. But to keep it from being pink and blue and never coming clean, it's the only medium that I remove this for. I use this for everything else. Distress, sprays, glues, not with alcohol ink. So taking that off, and I'm just going to work on the glass itself, okay? Now there's a lot of different tools that we can work with, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I went through all of them in detail in previous videos, but there's a lot of fun things. We can do blending pens, we can paint from a palette, there's paint brushes and splatter brushes. These are all part of the alcohol ink line. We can stamp and do lifting, and I might get to that during the demo. It might happen. There's a mini mister. Now, if you're going to spray anything for your alcohol inks, you only want to spray isopropyl, right? You never, even if you see it on YouTube, you think it's real, no, never spray blending solution, right? See all that? Okay, it's there for a reason. Never spray this because, as I mentioned, that resin is designed to make this liquid bond to non-porous surfaces. Metal, glass, plastic, will also bond on fabric and wood, but those slick surfaces. So if you happen to put it in a spray bottle and you spray it and you inhale it in a liquid form, it will stick to the inside lining of your lungs. Not safe. If you happen to spray it in your eyes, you cannot flush this out with water. This is not a water-soluble medium. So that's why it's not in a spray bottle. Okay? You can shake it, you can splatter it. The fumes of that, I've already mentioned, just well-ventilated area, but it's that liquid form that becomes very toxic. So that is why you don't want to spray it. Isopropyl, if you inhale it, well, they use it in the medical world. So it's okay to, if you inhale it, it's not going to be toxic. If you spray it in your eyes, it's going to sting, but it will just evaporate. The resin in here is what is going to permit that. So just don't do it, okay? Just don't. Speaking of palette, I want to share this real quick. This is kind of my palette. You can see I don't really do much painting. I don't consider myself an alcohol ink artist. I'm an alcohol ink maker. I like to just make backgrounds and fun things. But if you're into painting, you can drip your alcohol inks in this alcohol ink palette. This is how it comes. We also have one for distress. It's the same thing. It's an empty palette with a hinge lid, so it keeps the dirt out of it. You let your alcohol inks dry, and then you could go in with a brush that's dipped in isopropyl, reactivate that color, and you can do painting. Sharon Harris, who is a fabulous painter, she's the one that really kind of inspired that whole painting world for me in using alcohol inks. You can also use an alcohol blending pen. This is just a pen that's sold empty, right? Comes like this. You remove the nibs, and this is the newer one. We had this a long time ago, but I didn't really like the nibs on it. So if you have one that says a fillable pen, this one's a little different shape and much bigger nibs, right? You can see that that's a nice chunky nib. You simply pull the nib out. It has a felt material inside. You take your bottle of blending solution, you stick it in the nib, you give it a few squeezes, you wait 5 minutes, give it a few squeezes, wait 5 minutes. You do that about 3 or 4 times. Don't just fill it up because it'll shoot out the other end. But once it absorbs into this material, you cap it up. So it's a dual tipped marker. See, that one's even another brush tip. So the difference between the blending pen and the original fillable is both of these are brush. One is really chunky and one is soft. It's just a different type. You cap it 5 minutes, the blending solution wicks into each end, and then, well, I'll just show you. You can take your pen, let's say we have an image, let's say we just want to do some detail work, maybe you already have a background. You can go in and pick up a color. So we said, oh, let's go in and pick up this blue. We can just swipe this over the top, pick up the blue, and you can go in and color. So you can treat this like an alcohol marker, right? Just by picking up dry, because it just sits on the nib. Because it's got blending solution, a little goes a long way. It's going to allow you to kind of blend all your lines out, just like making your own alcohol markers, but you're really just using one. Then how do you clean it? Well, normally I would have a little bit of isopropyl sitting here and I'll scribble it through the isopropyl, but you can see that it will come clean. Even though your nib might be stained, it's still going to come clean. And if you just dip this in isopropyl, it will take that color out as well. And you just use it again and again. So you could pick up another color, you can go in, and so you can do all of your color blending and mixing with a pen if you're just more comfortable, like I am, with a marker over a paintbrush, right? Okay, but I just wanted to share. So this is Sharon's palette. She used this at a trade show. I'm like, can I have that? That's like art to me. But you can see just how well loved her ink palette is, because all this ink, although it's dry, it is all reactivatable, if that's even a term, where you can take any kind of solvent, dip that in, pick up color, and off you go. So for detail work, right, you wanted to add little dots of yellow or green. It's so much easier to control with a dry palette by just reconstituting with a little bit of alcohol, dipping it on there, and you're going to get those dots versus dripping it from the bottle, because that of course is going to expand bigger. So much to learn in the alcohol world, right? A splatter brush, same as Distress, but it's nice that I can just get a little isopropyl and splatter it on. So let me talk about cleanup. If you're going to work on this and you want to clean this up, you have options to use hand sanitizer. That's what I have in this bottle. Or you could use your 91% alcohol. I don't recommend using blending solution to clean, because this has resin, and even though it's going to clean off the color, it's going to leave that resin residue behind. So you can also use glass cleaner. It's also easy to do.
Yeah, let's talk about cleanup from last night.
Oh yeah, we had a leaker of one of the colors, and I was prepping it, and then I tried to clean it up, and then I made a bigger mess. I'm like, hey Mario, can you help me? Can you just clean the ink off of this bottle? The color was called Rosewood. It's not part of the new ones, but it's a really deep red.
It is so
He cleaned
red.
it. He cleaned it. He was all. He's like, oh, I got this as clean as I'm like, that's perfect. And just as he was done cleaning, right, just wiping it off, he just did this. It just fell out of his hand, hit the counter, red everywhere. It's like a crime scene. It was, but we've all done it. But again, sanitizer takes it off. I like hand sanitizer because of the gel consistency. It just allows for easier cleanup than alcohol. Okay, let's get into some stuff. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to start with just a piece of Yupo. Okay, now Yupo comes in different thicknesses, also different sizes. There's a lot of other alcohol ink papers out there from a lot of different companies. I encourage you to try them all. Try whatever you like. But Yupo, that comes in white. We also have it in heavy stock, which is a thicker version of Yupo, much thicker. We have translucent, so this is kind of like vellum. So it's not an acetate, but it's kind of vellum-like. I talked about the black. Now what makes these alcohol ink cardstocks versus just like regular black cardstock is that it has a coating that allows the solvent to sit over the top of it. This one is sparkle, and this is a brushed metallic. We also have Yupo in bigger sheets, right? Not all the specialty ones, but just the Yupos. These are in 8x10s. Again, not your standard card making size, but you can certainly cut it up for panels. Speaking of panels, there's a lot of different substrates you can work on. And I'm showing you all this because when I get into the demo, I'm not even going to stop to talk much about product. These are just kind of a vinyl coated wood panel. There's 3 of them in a pack. So if you like to do little art tiles or art canvases, these are called hardcore art panels, and you get 3 of them. It's just vinyl on a piece of MDF wood, and it's vinyl on both sides. They come in different shapes. I like the hexagon ones myself. So, all right, let's get into it. So for Yupo, we're just gonna play around with the background. Now, on a surface like this, right, I, again, like to work on the glass, but if you wanna work on a background, let's say we're gonna just do wispy stuff, and I'm just gonna preface this with, I am not an alcohol ink artist. I just merely want to play and demo the product. But if you're creating wispy surfaces, you don't want to tape anything. That's really not going to work. You don't want to do magnets because this is not magnetic, but also you don't want to leave a magnet mark on there. Okay, so here's a little trick. You can take your Yupo, because it's synthetic or any kind of synthetic paper, get yourself a spray bottle, spray one side. I'll spray that side that I just demoed with just some water. Place it down on your mat. Okay, and now my paper is there. Okay, just with a little water, right? Surface tension, okay? It's there. So now I can move things, I can use a hair dryer, I can do whatever, and my paper is not going anywhere. So that's just a little trick. That's why I love to work on this glass mat, okay? So we're gonna get out the isopropyl. Now the isopropyl, I don't like this little, I don't know, this little dingly bit, whatever it is, little rubber band thing. It's great when you're closing it, but when I'm using it, I just normally, you unscrew, you can take that off. I got this bottle on Amazon, but I'm sure you could probably get it at certain craft stores, okay? But that makes it really simple. Then we're going to just take some colors. So let me take my alcohol ink. I'll open these up. Usually I like to keep the cap in line with the color. So I'll use the palette that's here, kind of like I'm playing a game of checkers or chess. It just will make sense, okay? Well, thanks for the kind words. I'm full of tips, right? That's just how it is. Okay. We'll take some of this. We'll even throw in, gosh, who knows? I'll probably end up opening most of these, but it's just going to be fun to play around with them. All right, so let's just start with a real kind of simple thing on my paper. I'll take just some isopropyl, and let's take some alcohol. We're going to It's what I love about having this 2-ounce bottle. You don't need to hose it, but now you're not, I know some people, because it's that little bottle, you're like 1 or 2 little drips and that's it. I saw that you use a rubber band to hold that thing. Me too, but then I was like, hey, you're out of here. Okay, here's a few ways to move it around. One, we can take the blower. Now the blower, you're gonna see just a little bit of air, how sensitive that movement is, because we put down isopropyl, which is what's allowing this to move, okay? On a larger substrate like this, a hairdryer is also just going to allow us to move it. Now, this is on a low setting, which is what I love because it gives me a little bit more control versus like creating spin art. I've seen people use canned air. They can do all sorts of things. But the benefit of this is that we can continue to add more isopropyl. You can introduce different colors, right? You can get this to just kind of move around into that area. A lot of artists will also go in with a brush. So keep in mind that when you're creating with alcohol inks, I'll just turn this off for a second, you don't limit yourself to one tool. You're an artist. That would be like as a stamper, you only use one stamp and one ink pad. No, we've got ink pads and brayers and embossing guns and all of that. Same thing for alcohol ink. So use different tools to achieve different effects, right? A blower if you want to create just a little subtle movement, or maybe like if you watch right here, see how I can just kind of create that open space, pushing that out, concentrating it in one area because of that little opening, whereas a dryer is going to get a little bit more movement. Let's say we want to pull color. A paintbrush is going to be great. Now you could have a little cup, a little jar. A lot of times I'll use, do I have them here? Yeah. I'll use like resin cups that you can get with resin. I'll just rip that open. Any type of little plastic cup. We can put some alcohol in here. Some people have like little glass things, whatever, but you can just put a little bit of alcohol. You don't need a lot. But this is going to let you take a paintbrush and just get some of that in the alcohol and then just pull this, right? The cool thing about alcohol ink is it's very, very forgiving. It's going to allow you to create that fluid movement in the ink itself. Now, as long as this stays wet, it's going to continue to migrate, to move. That's what alcohol inks do. That's like its specialty, right? But alcohol inks will always react with themselves and any other kind of solvent unless they are sealed, okay? And we'll get into sealing at the very, very end. I don't want you to get caught up on that, right? But the great thing about this is that even if an area is dry, so let's go in and I'm just gonna dry this one area real quick, okay? You can see that one spot. If I went in now with a smaller brush, so here's a smaller brush that I have, and I put on a little bit of alcohol, okay? That's gonna, just by adding some little dots, right? You're gonna get that reaction. Now, this is isopropyl, it's gonna have a lot of movement. If I wanted to use just a little bit of blending solution, because blending solution has resin in it, I can put just a little bit on my glass mat, just put some of that right there. You can see that it's a little bit, I don't wanna say thick but it is. It's thicker than isopropyl. But I can just take my brush, and now if I go into this area and I add some blending solution, just want to show you the difference, okay? Because that's a little bit thicker, can you see the difference in these dots, how they've migrated, and these dots, how they're just a little bit more connected? And that has to do with viscosity, and that also has to do with resin, right? The resin is what's going to allow that ink to kind of be a little bit more stable. So there's no right or wrong. That's why I said you can even do that with color. You could take your ink palette, you can take your brush, dip it in a color, pick up a color, and you can dot colors that way. So there's a lot of cool ways that we can do movement with inks. Another way, the traditional way, the way I started, was using an ink tool and felt, okay? Felt is not to be confused with blending foam. There's no need to use blending foam with alcohol ink simply because you're wasting your ink. Felt is just regular felt from the craft store. Ranger sells it already in these discs, and I also like the thickness of this felt. I think it's a nice weighted felt. These are disposable, so when you're done, you peel them off, you throw them away. Don't save them because these are combustible inks, so we don't want to save this dry solvent, but you can just simply stick that onto the Velcro. It's the same handle that you would use for a blending tool. We used to have the original rectangular one. Ranger might still have it, but I like this little guy, okay? Now let's say we wanted to move this around. I haven't really done much. I would continue to work on it, but this is a demo, so we're just gonna play around. I'll just take some blending solution and I'm just going to apply some to this felt, okay? Now when I stamp into this area, you're going to see that these inks will just start to come back to life. Now blending solution, what I love about that is because of that resin in it, that different viscosity, it's giving me a whole different effect to that ink, right? It's creating kind of this playtime, and you can see this vibe. And again, my paper has not moved. It's just water under there, guys. It's just water. It'll come off at any time that I want it to, but it's just water. Now, as this ink dries, you're going to see it creates this beautiful kind of agate or polished stone look, all right? But let's say you love these little dots. See those little tiny dots? Let's say you love that. Well, in order to achieve that, you have to freeze it in motion. You've got to keep that solvent from evaporating and spreading out, because that's what it is. These are a solvent-based ink. When we're using a blending solution, this is an ethanol, that's why it's flammable, versus an isopropyl, which is the regular alcohol. But if we want to freeze this, we can either use the hairdryer, right? So we can have it on low, we can stamp this, and we can dry it. And stamp this, and dry it. And see those little dots that are appearing? I'll pull this up closer to the camera so you can see. So I'm stamping, drying, and it's the same solvent that's on there, right? You'll know if you need more when you don't see anything happening, okay? And this doesn't have to be just blending solution, it could be a color. Now to take this off for the dismount, I do not enjoy having sharp objects shoved up under my fingernails. So I just take a piece of paper, it could be a cardstock, anything that's gonna be cardstock, and just go under the corner, and that's what's gonna release the surface tension of the paper. But take a look at that. Look at all those cool little dots. Right? And this is just from playing around. This was no thinking. Thinking is overrated, okay? Totally overrated. So here we go. That's one little element. Now, if there's still moisture on here, you can place this right back down. You don't have to spray it again, and you're back to this being stuck to the surface. So let's keep playing, shall we? Let's keep going into some different effects. Let's go in with a little bit of moss. And we'll add some of this. So let's just say this is not where you want to go. You're not liking any of this. That's the beauty of alcohol ink. We can go in and we could add isopropyl or blending solution. Like people say, well, when do you use what? You'll kind of just realize, you know, most of the time now, if I'm doing bigger pieces, I prefer isopropyl because I'm getting more movement. If I want a little bit more control, or if I want my inks to kind of stay strategic on a card, I prefer blending solution. So there's just different things for just different looks. So here now we're taking that hairdryer. I'm just doing that just to blend it. And now I want to go into the blower because that's going to give me further movement. See how I'm able to, so I'm not just sitting there like taking blood pressure, right? I'm not doing that. I'm using it as a tool to actually move the color. See? So as I'm applying that pressure, I'm moving the little schnozzle and kind of having that go in all different directions, wherever you want to push that color. And see how that moss is now integrating into that monsoon and that laguna right there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, okay. Then we could still go in and say, oh, you know what? I want that to go in a little bit more over there. No problem. We can still pull this in with our brush and pull that color around to get whatever effect you want. And don't worry about your brush strokes. Your brush strokes are going to start to kind of relax as that solvent dries. Embrace the space. If you're doing alcohol ink, that's kind of a fun thing to do, to embrace the space. But you'll see that when we kind of blew out the inks, do you see how they started to come back around? This is where this tool is really functional as you're creating, because you can keep going in there and you can just really subtle control over your color. So it's almost like a tide, right? A lot of people create beautiful tidal or like ripple effects, and that's about applying air, letting the ink come back a little bit, applying air, letting the ink come back at different levels, and you'll start to create these lines in there. And people make roses with them. I mean, there's so many different amazing things that you can do with alcohol inks. The thing I want you to remember is you're only as good as your next layer. So if you're happy with it, step away, you're done. If you don't like it, you can go back and add whatever you want to bring things back to life, okay? So let's talk about alloys, because I'm gonna still work on this background. If you want to introduce alloys, usually I like to do that the same time I apply my color, because I want the metallic to kind of integrate with the color. I want that to just really have movement. If you put it on the top, chances are it's going to look like you put it on the top. right? It's going to look like that. It's still going to react to inks, but it's not going to create that same kind of fluid movement. And that's why I'm just going to show you on here, and then we'll do another piece where I use the alloy with the ink. So this is the one that you need to shake up, right? Just give it a little mix. And we'll go ahead and put some down. Now this is incredibly intense stuff, so you don't need much, but you'll see when you drip it on, it's pretty thick because it does have pigment to it. We can put a little ISO on there just to move that, but remember what I said about alloy. We need to introduce blending solution because that's what's going to give it the resin to bond to the substrate. So here we're just going to go in and we're just going to move this around. Okay, I'll move this one with the blower a little bit. Okay, if you want to use the hair dryer, I'll show you that. You can still move that. But the idea about the blower is we want these alloys to start to break up. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to focus here. I'm not going to focus here. Just so when I hold this to the camera, you'll see like what I'm doing and what I'm not. So this one, I'm kind of chasing this alloy around. I'm seeing where it wants to go to the edge. I'm breaking up the party. This one, I just let it get together and hang out. Okay. And you'll see just what I mean, that it goes in with the color, but it does look like it's sitting on top of it because it's a pigment. And it's good to see both ways. That's the whole purpose of why I like to do demos, because it's not about, for me, it's not about the start to finish. It's about you understanding and feeling comfortable with the medium to go and explore yourself. So I'm taking my paper just to kind of break that surface tension. And there's our gilded. And look at how intense that metallic is, right? So here you can see where it sits, it just is all together. But where you start blowing it around or breaking up the party, you start to get these, that's what I was talking about, chunks. They're not textural chunks, but it's where that leafing metallic starts to clump together and it floats off into an island, which is beautiful, okay? If you want to break up the party, you can. You can always go back. You can always go back and add more blending solution if you want. We could even go in and add some colors. So maybe we want to add just a little purple. So we'll add just a couple of drops of vineyard to that. Maybe we want to still go in with a little bit of isopropyl because that's going to give it even more movement. And let's break that up. Let's break up the party, okay? Introducing that color in that way. If you want more movement, don't freak your freak. Just add that, right? Thin it out, take your brush. Like once you kind of get into it, and I'm telling you, I encourage you so much, follow these artists that I'm going to share. They share so much content on YouTube. They share a lot on their reels on Instagram. Like Manifest Jess, like she shares a lot of stuff. Ashley, there's just so many different things. And of course, the Alcohol Ink Art community that's on Facebook, there's like a paid level where you get so much education and inspiration. So if this is your jam, yes, you're going to find quite a bit on YouTube. You're going to find stuff on Instagram, but every artist has their own technique. And that is what I love, is that you're going to be able to kind of figure out what's going to work for you, what look and feel works for you. So this purple, let's say, oh man, I don't want the purple there. I want some of the purple just to kind of come across over here. Great, bring it, right? Bring it on, bring some of that movement over there. Don't be afraid to just play around with your inks, honestly. The more you play, the more comfortable you're going to get just kind of experimenting with colors and what you can and can't get away with. Right? I'm not going to say can and can't do because you can pretty much do whatever you want, but it's just what you're going to get away with as far as color and movement. All right. Let me move some of this out. So see how it's kind of dark here? This is the beauty of the blower. See how the blower really can push, and I even push some of the color off the edge, right? If you have too much color, that's what I love about the blower, is that's going to help me kind of move some of that off. All right, so let's just talk about another effect. And I'm going to pull in another piece and we'll do another new piece. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to dry this for a second. Alcohol ink is a pretty fast drying time, but when you thin it out with isopropyl or blending solution, you certainly extend that drying time. Okay, so the more you add, the more it's extended. But once we have this effect, we can add those dots. And so remember how I talked about adding dots with blending solution? Well, let's say we wanted to add in a color. Let's say we wanted to put in some of that Laguna there. I like to normally take a little blending solution right onto that felt. I'll take whatever color maybe I want to introduce into that area. and I'll just go in and start stamping that out. And see how that's just going to replace that? It's crazy how that does that, right? But that's just going to allow you to just go in and move some of that color around. And you have a little bit more control with this tool than you do always blowing the ink around. So I said, different tools, different things, all right? So what is the best way to clean brushes after blending solution? Isopropyl. This cleans everything. Alcohol cleans alcohol, right? So how do you clean all the inks off your brush? Isopropyl. How do you clean blending solution? Isopropyl. Because blending solution is just alcohol ink without color. It's exactly the same base as these inks. It just doesn't have a color. So whatever you would do to clean this, you would clean that. It's just isopropyl. So on this, let's add a little effect. Let's take our mini mister. Now I know this one has alcohol because I take a Sharpie and I color the cap with red, right? You could use alcohol ink, I suppose, to color the cap, but I always know that this is the one with alcohol because these you just fill it yourself. This is the one that comes in that little toolkit with the brushes, right? There's 3 little paint brushes and that mini mister in the tool set. Really basic, nothing special about it. But what I like about the mini mister is, well, it's just that. It's mini, right? And so it will provide just a small amount because this is going to be super sensitive. So watch what happens. I'm going to keep my distance, so I'll be off camera because I don't want to blast it from there. And I'm just going to let these little droplets kind of fall on my background. Okay? Do you see that right there? Do another little mist. See that right there? And I can get closer just so you can kind of see what's going on. All right? And the more you add, the more you create kind of this galaxy. Now, if you want to freeze it, we have the technology, right? If you want to keep those little droplets, dry them. Otherwise, they're going to spread out and they're going to create a thin area over here where you'll see this, okay? And that, again, is just isopropyl in a mini mister because we don't spray blending solution. All right, let's pick this up. Take a look at that. Look at that beautiful effect, right? Super Galaxy. Can you stamp on this? Absolutely. And again, I cover that in other videos about stamping with archival or doing embossing. You can die cut this. You could do so many different things with this background. This is where I sprayed it and I just let it do its thing. So it creates a really nice kind of dreamy little spongy look. And then this is the one that I dried. So I see a question, do the alloys have resin? Yes, every single part of the alcohol ink line has resin in its base, right? Mixatives, alloys, it has resin because that's what's going to keep that pigment from like solidifying, but it doesn't have enough resin to bond it to the surface. That's why you want to add blending solution, right? Because if you add too much resin in here, then you can't get things to mix back up. So it does have resin. It does have a resin base. It's not just isopropyl and pigment, but I felt that it doesn't have enough to keep it from fluming off. But experiment, play around. There's people really that just use alloy and they don't use blending solution, and they're perfectly happy with the results. So really do what works for you. So there's one background. Let's quickly clean this up and we'll play around with some other things. So when I clean up my glass mat, okay, let me just cap this one real quick. I think the next one I'll use some warm colors. I'm not going to clean up everything, but I know I have a lot of ink here. You could go in with your isopropyl and squirt that down, but it's going to evaporate really fast. Hand sanitizer, because it's gel, it just, to me, it cleans up better. It makes it easier. So I can just take a paper towel. That's just some hand sanitizer. You can hear it. And it just takes that right off. And it just allows me to clean up that area with ease. And anywhere that there's sanitizer is going to take everything off of the glass. So sanitizer, just to me, like one blob, just gives me more mileage. And then when I'm done, I would just go in and use like glass cleaner. Like when I'm done demoing at the end, Mario has some fancy glass cleaner that I love. I don't know where you get it, but it's fancy. It's foam.
Costco.
Oh, Costco. It's like a foamy glass cleaner, and man, it takes my media mat back to like new. So that's what I do when I'm done. Because let's face it, there could still be alcohol ink on here. In fact, let's check it out. Let's put just a little isopropyl. I'll take a white paper towel and let's see. There has to be like a little residue of that purple in some way. Yeah, see, not much, but there's some there. So that's why when I'm finished for the day, I'll just clean it to make sure there's nothing. Oh, it's fancy.
So fancy.
It is. I love this stuff. I like it because it's foam. Because, you know, I'm a 5-year-old. So I like the fact that it foams up on there and it's like the scrubbing bubble thing.
Very
so
fun.
it's very fancy. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do another another background real quick. So let's talk about this guy. Let's do sparkle. Sparkle's fun. I'll do that. Now, sparkle also has like, I'm not going to say plastic, but it has an interesting backing that if you want to stick that down, let's take a little bit of water, right? If you want to place that down, you can get that also to stay on your mat, because anything that's going to be synthetic, anything that's going to have some type of little plastic background, right? That's going to keep it there. But that's only if you want your paper to stay. If you don't care about your paper staying, don't think that you have to do that every time, right? In fact, I'm just going to dry this off and we're going to just have fun with this one. All right, so this is sparkle. This looks like a glittery paper. In fact, it has no glitter in it at all. It is printed like this, but this printing, ooh, it's going to do some really cool things. Let's take this and we'll apply some colors using felt. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want some intense areas, but I'm also going to be dripping too. So just kind of know that. So I'm just going to take some of these colors. We'll do it a little rainbowy. That'll be fine. The other thing I like about a glass media mat, it gives me kind of a, I don't know, like a work area, if you will. I'll still put a little bit of that Laguna in there because I like that. Okay, I just squirted some on there. Let's just stamp this on just to show you. So even though this is an alcohol ink cardstock, it is sparkle. When you first put color on there, you get a little discouraged, I'm not gonna lie, because the first time I tested this paper, I'm like, well, this stuff is garbage, right? Because when you put this on, it's like, I don't see any sparkle. I see sparkle there, but I don't see sparkle there. That's because the ink is still wet. But when this dries, the sparkle will reveal itself. Now, could you wait for it to dry? Sure. Can you apply heat to it? Yes. Even though it's a flammable ink, it's only to open flame. So as long as you're not drying your paper by candlelight, you can go in with a hairdryer or even a heat tool if you want, but really a hairdryer is kind of all you need. And once that solvent evaporates, there you go. You can see that sparkle start coming back, which is quite cool. Now, here's the thing about this paper, right? See, look at that. Ooh, beautiful. Look at that sparkle. What? Ah, so good. Okay, so this is dry. But one of the things that I like is the fact that you can play with different things, right? You can play with different effects. And that is the whole purpose of this live, is to say that even if you have alcohol inks in these bottles, which, you know, unless you have the new ones, this is probably what you have. You really need to allow yourself that playtime. This is not about color 1, color 2, color 3, stamp, 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 I'm done. Yeah, you can do that. If you know your thing, you're going to have your favorites and you've got your jam. But I'm telling you that the more you're going to work on these inks and these different backgrounds, the more you're going to discover what you can do. Now, I saw someone say, do they only work on specialty papers? Well, not on specialty paper, but they only work on a non-porous paper. So they do not work on regular cardstock. They do not work on watercolor paper. Because when you put the ink on there, it's just going to soak in and dry. It needs something synthetic or non-porous to float across. And that would be all the papers I talked about. Some people use different types of plastic. You can do this on ceramic tiles. Anything that is non-porous is going to be your specialty. Glass, metal, even metallic papers, which I'll talk about in just a second. So this one, and this was just something I discovered by accident one time I was getting ready for a trade show. I was demoing this and I did just what I did here. I'm like, holy moly, that is a hot mess, Holtz. So I didn't like it. So here's what I did. I went in, let me cap this up. Not for fear of drying, just for fear of me blasting this right out, which I probably will in a second. So just gonna move this out, okay? I'm gonna take my splat box, this box right here. I use it for many, many things. I'm gonna stand this up, right? My splat box is back here. You could use whatever you want, but I love my splat box. I'm gonna take a paper towel because I want it to kind of catch the juice. You'll see this in a second. I'm gonna stand this up, right? Because I want gravity to help me out here. And then I'm going to take my mister that has isopropyl, 91%, and I'm just gonna start hosing this down, right? So I'm just gonna really saturate this. And I'm just blasting it with isopropyl. What's happening is you're gonna get all these crazy striations. Now, could you just go in with the bottle like I did the swatches and go across? Absolutely. I just felt that by misting it, you just kind of get, I don't know, it just, to me, it created something a little softer. And you're gonna let it do its thing. You see that? Okay. Now you could do this on Yupo. You could do this really on anything that you want. You can completely do that. But what I'm going to do is take this. I'm going to tip it forward because I want to try to take off. Remember, we're spraying all the alcohol. It's going to the bottom. It's going to leave that bead. You can still see how it's beading up at the bottom right there? There you go. So I leave it there for just a few seconds so I can just tip it forward just to try to take off the bulk of it. And look at what's happening, right? We're getting kind of like, I don't know, it's like this rhodium metal. It's beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and dry it. So if you like the idea of the mini mister, the alcohol ink tool thing is the way to go because you're going to get the brushes and the mini mister, but hey, it's up to you. You do you. You could also use a spray bottle, right? You could have a spray bottle dedicated to alcohol if that's really what you're going for. And we're going to just let this dry. I'm going to take this out. This, I'll just save for, until I do the next time. It just has isopropyl on it, so it's not a flammable thing, but I'll use it until it's pretty saturated. This again can air dry. I'm only using a hair dryer just to speed up the drying time, not because that is what is making it work. Okay, that's the thing to remember. It has nothing to do with any of that. So take a look at this paper now. What? Oh man, beautiful blendy. And let's say you didn't like these tones. Let's say you wanted to just go in and add blue. You could add a whole nother color and do the whole thing again on the same sheet of paper. Right? Because remember, it didn't blast through the paper because this is designed as alcohol ink paper. So if you're like, oh, I have glitter paper, I'll try it. You could try it. It may not be as successful because it's going to probably soak right through the back of it. And that is why we create specialty papers designed for a medium. But isn't that awesome? Great to like die cut something, or you could stamp on this because it's totally smooth. You can run this through an embossing folder. I mean, man. Is really cool. That's just kind of one of my favorites. Just a fun thing to do. Okay. Let's go in and do another background with Yupo and alloy, like I talked about. We use Foundry this time, just to create something. And I'm going to use some other colors, not just the new 2-ounce ones, but there's other ones to the party. Again, I'll work on a piece of Yupo, just because I want to work on that. We can. Let's see, do I have a panel? Let me say, if I have a panel, I would use it. I got this one. I was just gonna see if I had an alcohol panel. I'll just open one. Why not? Yeah, because these are just, no, thank you, I got this. These are just fun. Just something different than a piece of Yupo, because I already did one on Yupo. I like this. Again, it's just a vinyl. They're hardcore art panel. It's vinyl on both sides with that piece of wood. So this is not die cuttable. This is actually wood that's on there. But I think what's cool about this is if you wanted to kind of play around with, making just different arty things, because maybe you're not going to use it as a card, we'll play around with this one. Okay. I'm going to take some other colors. I love rust. That's a good color. That's kind of one of the originals. I also love, this is caramel. There's a lot of cool colors. I know that, where's lettuce? Ah, there we go. I love lettuce as well. So I'll use those. I'll use this. We're just going to play around, and we're going to use Foundry alloy. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go in and take this and say, all right, let's apply this. Take a little bit of the alcohol. We'll take a little bit of the ink. So those are little guys, right? And shake that. But then I'm going to take some of the big guy, little moss. That'll be nice. And then I'm just going to move this one around first, just a little bit, just to kind of get a little foundation of color. See, just that is like, boop, some people could just be like, okay, I'm good, I'm done, art. You totally could be, right? So this is still fluid, and this is where I'm going to add some of the alloy. So remember the last time I showed you it was completely dry, but this time I'm going to add some of that. So I'm just going to shake it up, and we're just going to start with just a few drips. We can always go back and add more, right? But there's no takesies backsies on alloys, meaning you saw how I was able to lift the color. It doesn't work the same with an alloy because it's a pigment. So when I'm doing a background, I usually start with my blending solution right over that drop, just like 1 or 2 drips. This way I know I've added the resin to it. Then everything else could be done with isopropyl, all right? Everything else could be done with that. So let's just play around with just kind of moving some of this around, and then we're going to add some other colors. So let's go in with some rust. Again, I'm just going to shake that on. I'll move some of that off to the side. and a little caramel. This is just going to warm it up. We'll still go back to some of the vivid colors, but I will say that, you know, there's only a couple of the dirtier colors that made it into these 2 ounce to start, which is great. Now I'm going to add some isopropyl just to kind of get some movement. Let's play around with this for right now. So see how this just, you can kind of see how the inks just kind of like, they just float a little bit with a hairdryer, a little different. But then when you get like when you use the air blower, then it's just like, whoosh, okay, we're going to move it. But that's what I want, right? Now I want to just get some inks to go specific places. And that's where the blower is. And each time I'm using it, again, you'll see I'm not totally compressing it. That's what I like about this air blower. It's very soft. So if you have, you know, people that have carpal tunnel, or it's just, sometimes it's really tough on certain tools where you have to squeeze them so hard to get them to do anything. I didn't want that to be the case for this. All right, let's go in and add, I'm going to add a little bit more isopropyl to this. We're going to add a little bit of dandelion that's going to be a little bit brighter. We're going to pump up some of that color with the Guna. And again, we're just going to move that around. And you'll see, like, once you kind of get something the way you like it, it's totally fine just to kind of step away from that. Take a little blending solution, because blending solution is super reactive with the alloys. See how it just, told you, it breaks up the party. Remember that. Just going to move that again, just using that air blower. Ooh, digging that. And I'm going to take a little bit more color, bring this over here. There it is. I knew I took it out of the way. Throw in some ember, right? It's very nice. I mean, I have to say, it is very nice having some of those colors in bigger bottles. I would probably, I mean, I couldn't imagine Ranger wanting to do all the colors of alcohol ink in 2 ounce bottles. That probably never will happen, but it is nice to know that some of the kind of most used colors or some favorites will be added to it. So, all right, just going to go in and just move, right? Don't be afraid to just go in and add some movement. Because see what that's doing? Just adding a whole different look to that. I'm going to move that around. I like the hairdryer because that just kind of blends it. And then I like the blower because that's what's going to give me, I think, just some kind of cleaner movements. All right. So now I'm going to go back to the trusty tool. Now at some point, I get enough colors on that felt where I just want to change it out. And you'll see I have a couple of, there's another one that's over here that's already discarded. The reason I do that is because, as I mentioned, alcohol reacts with itself, right? So if you just use the same felt over and over, even though this ink is dry, you add a color. So specifically, I want to go in and introduce a color to this. But if I add it to something that's mucky, it's just going to be muckier. That makes sense, right? So that's why I tend to change it out. All right, I'm looking for, there we go. I'm looking for a little sepia. I'm going to put that on there. I'm also going to take mushroom. Didn't want to use it too much because I didn't want to be this mushroom hour, but if I can find it, I don't know where I put it. There we go. Take a little bit of that. All right. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Monsoon. Now, anytime I add ink on here, and this is just my preference, I like to go in with a little bit of blending solution because this was designed to blend the color in. So now when I go in and stamp this, it's just going to take that and help blend that color in to the background. Hold on, my felt is coming off of the tool. There we go. Right, so you can see how that little color, instead of it sitting on the top, is just going to blend itself in. Just creates that softer look. Now, if you want it to be intense, then really the optimal idea is to shake on some color. So there's some Monsoon, but you can still go in, oh, I don't know why this isn't, there we go. And we can still kind of knock that out a little bit. I'm telling you, the more you kind of play, the better it is. We're going to take some of that Foundry over here. I'm going to put a little bit more on there. It's just so cool. So when you're putting this on, again, I'm just going to go in with a drip. I'm going to go in with a little blending solution. I'll even go in with a little bit more rust. So I want to shake that on. See, it just, and you could even watch it just do its thing. That's the that's the whole fun of working with this. It is one of those things that when you work with a medium, I'm just showing you what you can do with that foundry, right? So if you just sit there and you keep that isolated in one area, not a good idea. I mean, unless that's what you're going for. See how it's like a big, I told you, they want to stay together. So we're here to break up the party. So that's why these bottles of ink, you know, you might think, oh, I've only ever used just a drip here or there, because I saw some comments of like, why would you ever want this much ink? Because if you are using it in this way, if you are using it to kind of create different paintings or different styles, this is why you're going to want that, because you're going to want to be able to really manipulate that color. And I love the idea of using, I mean, you can see I tend to use the air blower probably more than I should, but I just feel that it helps me control it a little bit more. I know there's a lot of artists that just kind of put things on there and you get what you get, and that's totally fine. And then a lot of times I'll jump back to the hairdryer because I want to freeze. Like when I see something, it's like freeze frame, I want to stop that. And now I'm going to go in and I just want to add some orange dots. Not with a paintbrush, although you could, but I'm just going to take that. And I'll even go in and I'm going to add some stenciling to this one, okay? So this is just a little bit of rust. Again, if you want something brighter, so we can mix a color, so we could take a little bit of rust, we can throw in a little bit of ember over here, so you can mix your colors, right? You can put one color right on top of the next and create a new color. Usually when I do that, I tend to kind of just work on my glass just a little bit just to kind of get those together. And if you concentrate that in an area, excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay. So here's what we have so far. There's our panel. A lot of depth. You can see that metallic. You know, sometimes you don't really see it when it's sitting up there, but you get some really beautiful color effects and blends. And you'll see that foundry. There you go. See when the light hits it? You see what I mean? That by controlling it, by kind of breaking it up, you're getting more of that striation of color. But if you continue to thin it and really blast it, you can kind of get that all over sheen. So you still have the option, even with the alloys, of whether you want to create kind of those strong lines of color or whether you want things to kind of blend out as much as you want. Okay, it's totally up to you. And you can keep going. I mean, really, you can look at this, you can turn it, you can sit there and go, okay, that's good. I mean, I'm looking at this going, not so much for me. I don't know. I dig this. I dig Monsoon and Laguna. So I'm never one to be concerned with, oh my gosh, I need to stop. Not when it comes to alcohol inks. I just don't. Because not when it comes to most things. I just think like it is fun to just kind of play around and see what you get. Right. I'm going to take this, kind of clean off that brush. I'm just going to move some of that out. All right. There we go. I just like that coloration. I don't know. I think that's just me. All right. Dry it again and we'll get into some stenciling. So while this is drying, I'm going to do a quick splatter. Why do I use splatter over mister? Completely up to you. A mister is going to mist almost like a galaxy. A splatter brush is plastic. It's just going to give you like bigger flecks, I guess, if you will. It's still kind of galaxy, but I think it's definitely bigger. And I'm just using isopropyl. You could, if you're going to splatter, you could splatter with a color, but if you're doing splattering with a color, then I would recommend using it in like a splat box. Otherwise, you're going to have ink everywhere. But I'm just pulling back on the middle and I'm letting it go. So I'm not actually touching the bottom. Again, I talked about splatter brush quite a bit, but it adds a whole different effect, especially with isopropyl on this background. Just bigger. You can see what it reminds me of. It really reminds me of like salt. If you ever do salt with dye, it's just cool. All right. What are you using to clean the brush? Just alcohol. Just 91% isopropyl.
I like to
There we go.
ISO.
Well, yeah.
I don't know that I ever knew that was how to say that.
I call it ISO. I like that. Okay. And I just keep going because again, Isopropyl. I don't have to worry about resin everywhere. Here's what we got. So take a look at the difference that you see those spots, how they're just kind of bigger. They have a little bit more to them than when we did the misting on the other panel. I think, there we go. I can bring that in. That's a Yupo one. So you see when we were doing that, see like how tiny those are, and plus far more concentrated, right, when you spray it. But when you splatter it, you see how they can just be a little bit more, I don't know, spread out. Again, totally your call. Now that area is not dry yet. You see that wet area? We're going to take care of that right now. I'm just going to move this out just with that piece of felt, and we'll dry it. Okay. So stenciling, what could we do with stenciling? Well, we could do a few things. Usually when it comes to stenciling, I'll show you a couple of ways. One is we can take a design. Let's see what I have here. Oh, these are all really big. I'll use this one. This will be fine. All right, we could take a stencil, and let's say we want to take something through it. If you try to go in with either ISO or blending solution, anything fluid, chances are you're going to get weird movement underneath your stencil, right? Because it's fluid. Lift ink, this is a stamp pad that's designed to stamp and lift an image. It's really cool, but we can also use the lift re-inker, and that's what I'll use through the stencil. And when I use that, I'm just going to go in and change from felt, which I've been talking about using before, to a foam, right? It could be flat foam or it could be domed foam. I tend to prefer flat foam for this particular technique. Again, personal preference. As always, you do you, okay? I can't stress that enough when it comes to any technique. You might look at this and be like, this is just a hot mess. It's just a bunch of mud. Yeah, that might be to you, but for me, I just like the look. Okay, next I need to find where that actually went. Okay, where did I can't even find it. I'm sure it's right in front of my face. Where's my ink tool? Anyone see it on camera? There we go, it's right here. My ink tool. Okay, I'm gonna take a piece of foam now. I'm going to use my Lift Ink re-inker. I'm going to apply this because this is almost glycerin-like. I'm going to put a little drop there. You can see it on there. And if you want to learn more about Lift Ink, again, I'll link to those alcohol videos where I go way more in depth about stamping with Lift Ink and doing all sorts of cool things. But I can go through an area, I can place my stencil down, and just using the Lift Ink, it's like I said, it's very glycerin-y, so it's not wet and squishy. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to pounce through a stencil, that Lift Ink. Okay, really light. Could you do this with a stencil brush? You could do this with a stencil brush as well. But I just like to use the foam because I think it just allows me to just pounce like lighter layers at a time. Okay, so I've just gone through and just added some of that. Okay, you can see it's starting to lift a little bit, but Lift Ink doesn't do all the heavy lifting. You still have to do that. So what I'm going to do is take a soft paper towel, right? Talked about using Viva or something like that. And I'm just going to start dabbing, right? I don't want to wipe this off because that's going to blur it. I'm just going to take this and just start dabbing and continue to dab as we lift this ink, okay? Now, the more Lift Ink you put in an area, the more it's going to lift off that area. And it also depends on how much alcohol ink you put on a substrate, right? How much it's going to lift off. So I'll show you the difference between this and another area of the panel, okay? So once you've kind of lifted this off, then you can kind of burnish that, and that's what we have. Look at that. See how that's just lifted that design through it? So cool. But this is, I don't even know how many layers, right? If you kind of lost count, it just goes and goes and goes. But again, we lifted it off. We just dabbed this, and that's going to absorb and pull that off. You don't just wipe it until you don't. So what I was doing is I was checking. I'm like, oh, I don't see any more Lift Ink. Then you can just wipe off the excess. But let's take that same Lift Ink and let's go into an area where I didn't add a lot of ink, something kind of off on the edge, right? Where it's a little bit more subtle. So let's say we want to just do some numbers going a different direction. Okay, just to show you the difference. It's all about playing and experimenting. That's what I think. Don't freak your freak. Get your stuff. We have it. I know many people, you know, buy and they're like, oh, I'm too afraid to use it. And I cannot wrap my head around that thought process. I just don't. That'd be like going grocery shopping and then saying, I'm afraid to cook. Well, then why'd you buy it? right? Because you're hungry, well then you should go out to eat. So if you don't want to craft, then you should just buy finished art, right? That's the thing. So I think really getting over that fear factor and just playing, that's the only way to build confidence. I guess that would be with any skill, right? The more you do it, the more you can kind of build your confidence. So you can see right away, before I even lifted it, because I haven't done that yet, you can see it, right? That's because there's less ink here than here. So the more layers of ink you put down, the more time you should spend dabbing on your re-inker, because you've got to eat through all those layers to get through. But because there's less ink here, you'll see that when I dab it, that area is going to be far more lifted, almost down to the base, down to the core of that. Again, just something to kind of remember, recognize. And I always pick like a clean spot of my paper towel. Just look at it. See, there's not any ink there. So then I can just swipe off the excess. And there we go. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And this just adds to me a whole nother element to your artwork. This could be a background. This could be a foundation for something else. You can add a whole lot of different things on how you work with it. And often it will change a background, right? When I said you're only as good as your next layer, you can keep playing around with things until you get it the way you like it, right? So if I'm gonna use this, I'd probably put something over here, right? If I wasn't going to, I'd probably still go in and paint or work this out, because you can keep working this. Even with the lift ink, you could go in and redo the background and the lift ink would go away the same way the alcohol ink did, right? Okay, so another way to use a stencil, we're having a good time, is dripping this on. And you may have seen this from a lot of different places. Whenever I do this technique, this is the one that I think just gets a little messier. I'll do this on something smaller. So this is just a piece of Yupo that I've just cut down. I've cut it in half. For this particular one, because we're going to use a significant amount of ink, here's what I would suggest. I would suggest getting something a little bit disposable. This happens to just be like deli paper that you can pick up, because you'll see that this particular one is going to use quite a bit of ink. It's going to get a little messy. So I'm going to do deli paper there. Got another one. See, these are the art supplies that Mario buys, right? When he's at Costco. Glass cleaner, deli paper, all those things that, yeah, that is your jam. That is your thing.
I told everyone I used the blower last night for the first time. How did it go? I'm like, my technique is cleaning.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. You try. I'm going to put gloves on. Right?
Gloves.
I know. So I gotta take off the rings. I'm not going to put them on top of the gloves. But for this particular one, because you're going to see, I want to touch the ink. So that's the reason I'm going to put gloves on. If you don't care, then honestly, just kind of do your thing, right? But if you really want to kind of get into this, and this is for stenciling specifically, I recommend some type of glove. If you get a lot of alcohol ink on your hands, honestly, the easiest way to clean it is hand sanitizer. Just keep going with the sanitizer, soap and water, sanitizer, soap and water. So there we go. All right. Got gloves in my pork chop hands. Like these are, gosh, these gloves are just not big enough.
They're too small.
They're too small, but that's okay. I like them because I don't like when they're sloppy. Okay. So we're going to do one with a stencil.
So someone's asking, what is the substrate this time?
Yupo, but it could be anything that I've shown you. Okay. This could have been the panel. This could have been whatever, but this one's Yupo. All right. So I'm going to take this, and we'll do a couple of them. I'm going to take a stencil. Now I will preface this that most likely this technique will stain your stencil, but your stencil is still going to be fine. But if that drives you crazy, maybe you want to have a dedicated stencil for whatever it is you're doing. I would encourage you to explore with different types of stencils. This one happens to have a very thick design. There's also stencils that have very thin designs. Both will work. They'll just work differently, okay? Usually something that's thicker is going to give you a bolder impression. Something thinner is going to give you a little bit of a delicate impression, but sometimes all the detail, there we go, doesn't show up. So again, explore, experiment. So what I'm going to do is work on Yupo, and I want this to have that same kind of surface tension that I did when we started the demo on the mat. But instead of using water, because I'm going to be using inks, I'll just achieve that same thing using rubbing alcohol, right? Using ISO. So I could either spray the surface or I'll just spray the back of my stencil. So I'm just going to hold it over here. I'm just going to spray a little bit of rubbing alcohol on the back of my stencil. So you can use either side that you want. You're going to position your stencil down. Now these, my stencils with stampers are all like in that tag design. So I just kind of wanted to square it up on the edge. Now again, this isn't glue, it's not going to stick it, but it is going to keep it, see? It just kind of bonds it to that paper because of surface tension, and I don't have to, again, worry about tape, magnets, all that other stuff. Just placing that down. Then let the games begin. We're going to go in and just start dripping our colors of ink directly on there. Okay, hold on. It's the other thing I wanted to talk about. I'm glad that this happened. If you leave these open, right, even though, see that little bead of ink that's in the top? That little bead of ink in the nib is going to keep the air from going back into your ink and evaporating it. So if you're working on larger pieces, you can leave your bottles open. However, because these contain a resin, sometimes a little skin will kind of appear over that hole. And so if you go to use your inks and they don't pour out initially like you saw, then go in and just wipe it off. Do not give it a big old squeeze. Okay, so that's why you can either cap them if you don't want to have to worry about the resin thing. But if they ever kind of seem plugged or clogged, please don't squeeze it, because once that little thin line of resin comes off, it is going to be a hot mess for you. All right, so I'm just dripping this directly onto my stencil. Could you go in and use an ink tool and all that? Yes, you can. Completely up to you how you want to achieve this effect. You can go in and do kind of a rainbow design, totally up to you. But you'll see why I wanted to do some of that wax paper initially. Let's go in. Ooh, I'm glad I put the cap on that. See? Ooh. Yeah, Holtz. Okay. It is weird when I demo to try to keep everything on camera. I do my best. All right. Once I get some ink down there, then I'm going to take my gloves and I'm just going to start pressing this. It's going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to make sure that my stencil kind of becomes fused to the area. Two, it's going to fill in any of that white space. Now, as I'm going around, I am wiping off my fingers, because if I went into purple and then I went into yellow, I don't want to make brown. I don't mind making a little green or something, but just keep that in mind when you're doing this step. And all I'm doing is just pressing down. You don't need to use a brayer or anything like that, but it is nice to just go in with your fingers, because you can also move stuff. So like, for example, oh, hey, I want a little bit of blue. I could pick some of that up and just like finger paint, right? Bring a little bit over there. All right, pushing this down. Then what we're going to do is this needs to dry. That's probably the worst part of this. Could you use a hair dryer? There's a little spot right there. Yes, you can use a hair dryer. Could you use a heat tool? No, because it would go in and stain this. Won't it seep under the stencil? Yes, it will. That is our goal for this particular one. This is a different way of using alcohol inks with stencils versus just stenciling through it. Okay, this is going to keep a print. So this one, I'm just going to pull this off and we're going to let this dry. Okay, so I've got this down. I'm going to set it off to the side. I have no space to do that. Oh. I should have thought about the dismount. I should put it on a piece of chipboard. But I don't have that. Oh, thanks, Mario. Look at that. Okay, let's let this dry. Okay, you want to grab that fan out of that bottom right drawer, and maybe you can dry behind the scenes. That'll speed up the time. Cool. All right. So another one. Sometimes you'll have, it's going to be in the wood drawer, Mario, bottom right. There you go. So on this one, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, I'll just show you something a little different. So I'm going to spray the back of this one. This is using a stencil, the bottom right wood drawer. Thank you. I'm going to use the bottom of that, and I'm going to place that. So the cool thing about this stencil is I'm looking specifically at this design, right? Can you see the design, the numbers that are there? Okay, so for this, I'll just take a little bit of that color. I'm going to take a little bit of isopropyl. I'm going to spray that as well. You can see the iso just immediately kind of moves that, and I'm just going to press that color around. Okay, just pushing that down. So I didn't cover the whole area this time. You could do it just like the last one, but I just want to show you that sometimes it's just really cool to stick with a color. Just kind of move it around, leave some of that space, leave it kind of pooling up in some other areas, and we're going to let that dry. I think I want just a little bit more kind of in this area. There we go. And I'll push that down. Okay, cool. All right, there's one. We're going to let that one dry as well. Could you put another Yupo paper and do a smush? You could. but there's not going to be enough alcohol on the top of this to do the transfer, but we will do a transfer. So I see where you're going there, and I'll definitely show you how we can do that. But right now, and I'll hold this up, you can see that the alcohol is already really dried on top of that stencil. So there's not enough to make your print at this point, but we will in fact print, promise. Okay, so let's move that over there. Okay. No thanks, just, yeah, keep on drying if you can.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'm gonna take a little sanitizer and we're gonna just clean this off. And then we're gonna talk about some other backgrounds, okay? Now, one of the things that I really think is important is that, and I've said this, if you watched demos before, this won't be new to you, but if you're new to watching the demos, something that's really important, so just kind of think through this. Whenever we have all of our art mediums out, it is important to give yourself a chance to kind of play. Is this a 2-day project? No, it will be dry in just minutes. So it is, and if you have a ceiling fan going or something, that's going to speed up the process for sure. But when you have your stuff out, play and create and do all sorts of things. So you could have backgrounds and stuff that you've already created. So for example, this one that we've already created earlier. If you're doing a lot of backgrounds, you're going to have kind of a stockpile of backgrounds. And that's what makes it really fun to be able to take something you've done before. In this case, this is what we started with in our demo, and do something else to it, especially in the world of alcohol ink, right? So I'm going to take this background. Let's just go in. I'll just cut this. Just going to take that, and we're just going to cut that Yupo in half, right? Because it's just a background, and a background's just a background until it's not a background. But that's a good one. I like that one. This one we'll go ahead and play around with. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to take a piece of bubble wrap. Now, bubble wrap, you can use an entire piece. As you can see, I love to tear my bubble wrap because it gives me kind of a fragmented edge. And what I'm going to do is use the bubbly side of the bubble wrap. Not the smoothie side, but the bubbly side. And this is a dry background. It's already done. It's one we did earlier. And I'm going to take my ISO, so that's again 91% isopropyl, and we're going to apply it to the surface, okay? Just going to spray it right on my dry ink surface. And I give it a pretty good mist. You can see that it's already starting to react. And then I'm going to take the bubble wrap and I'll place this down. I think I'll go here. Let's do that. And I'm going to place the bubbles into it, right? So I'm just kind of pressing down, right? No CPR. We don't want to pop the bubble wrap. I know some people just love that, okay? But what I'm doing is I'm just making contact. So let me see if I can create the dismount and show you what I've just done. There we go. Okay, so can you see that by pressing it, see how those bubbles got darker? That tells me that I've made contact with the ink and the bubble wrap. That's what we want to do. So we press this down and we're going to let this dry as well. Okay, it's just going to, how long does it take to dry? It depends on where you live. Arizona shouldn't take too much longer, but you never know. Okay, thanks. You're busy. All right, let's take this one. Mario's been over there drawing it. Let's see how it's going. Oh, that fan actually did really well. Doesn't take too long. Okay, nice. All right, I'm just touching it. So that's, you know, the million-dollar question. How do you know if it's dry? If you touch it and it's not wet, then it's dry. So there you go. Perfect. So it doesn't take long to dry, but honestly, in a perfect world, you guys, I would set these aside. I would give it, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. In fact, I might even give it a little more, because I'll tell you why, right? Because when we do this, although the surface is dry, ultimately what we want to dry, I don't believe is dry yet. I'll just peel a little bit off, but I'm guessing that it's still wet under there. And it is. See, it's still a little wet. So ultimately, if you can let this dry completely, and I would say give it a good 20 or 30 minutes, then it's going to allow you just to create an easier reveal. Because if the alcohol under the stencil, because it is seeping under the stencil, that's the whole part of this technique. But if the alcohol under the stencil hasn't dried, then as soon as we take it off, it's going to start migrating together. So let's just leave this here for just a little bit. We'll talk about some other things and we'll come back to it, I promise, because we'll do printing and all sorts of things. All right. couple of other things that I like to use alcohol inks on, and now that I can take off, well, I can't take off the gloves because I need to still print with this. Okay, we'll talk about black because people talk about black paper quite a bit. This is the alcohol ink cardstock. This is black alcohol ink cardstock, so it's not just regular black cardstock. It's a nice kind of suede paper. I love it for card making and all sorts of things, but you can also use it to mix your colors. Now, I am not great at this. There's a lot of artists that are outstanding with using mixative and color. I'm just going to show you the effect, but I'm not going to demo this too much because I'll just make a giant mess. But really, there's artists out there. I know Sharon even does paintings with this, but I want you to see the effect of adding snowcap mixative, which is why it was one of the 2-ounce choices, because it is very cool. People do flowers and blossoms and all sorts of things with it. I'm reading the chat again. How do you clean the stencil? A lot of cleaners. You clean everything you touch with alcohol ink, you still clean with alcohol. You can use 91% alcohol, or you can use hand sanitizer, but it will stain the stencil a little bit, but that is how you clean it. You can spray it with alcohol. We're going to do prints on it, but 91% alcohol will clean all of your stuff, whether you use a paintbrush or a brayer or whatever it is that you work with. But just keep in mind, it's plastic. It's going to stain it. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to do mixative. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take some isopropyl. We're going to start with that. We're going to take some of this snow cap, and you're going to see, ooh, cool, white, awesome. I'll do something a little bright. So let's do some gumball. And I'm also going to throw in a little bit of crimson, right? Nice little red in there. Crimson is just a beautiful, beautiful red. And now we'll just move it around just so you can see, right? So once this snow cap mixes up with the color, it becomes almost like a velvet painting, right? Velvet painting of like Elvis or something like that. You can add blending solution. You don't have to with mixative like you do with alloy, but you can. You can thin it with more ISO, but what you need to do is we need to get that snow cap. You see that snow cap, how thick that is? You need to get that kind of mixed up. Now, I will tell you another tip is that many artists will take a cup, disposable cup, and already mix their colors, right? They'll take snow cap, they'll mix it with isopropyl already in there so it's thin before you apply to the surface, because what I wanted to show you is how concentrated that snow cap is. Like that you just keep busting through that barrier, but you're just getting these really beautiful, I told you, kind of almost pastel vibes from your color. Now over here, I'm gonna not put the snow cap, I'm just gonna try to dry it without so you can see what happens when it doesn't have that color. It does look like strawberry ice cream, you're right. So by adding snow cap, you're starting to get these beautiful tones from your color. Where there is no snow cap though, your color will turn to black because remember, these are translucent. So in order to create that, so could you take alcohol, ink, mixative, and isopropyl in a cup, mix it, and create this like pastel, creamy, dreamy look? Yes, you can. You can do that. But you're going to miss out on those undertones that you get with alcohol ink. You can continue to add color. So let's get a little bit more crimson. We can still put crimson kind of over those areas. I mean, look how dark crimson is. Oh, so good. We can throw in a little bit more isopropyl in those areas. And look at that. We can just create a whole nother layer. So it went from strawberry ice cream to kind of cherry. It's just beautiful how these work. And you can do all your paintings. You can still, everything that I shared with you, you can still splatter. You can do all sorts of things. But if you're interested in incorporating white or mixative, and snowcap doesn't just have to work on black, it would still give a much more dreamlike look even on white Yupo, but that's very, very cool to create those effects, especially if you did like different patina effects with greens and blues on that black cardstock. And you can see it's still wet, so you can still manipulate it and move it or dry it or do whatever. But I did want to do a very quick kind of way of seeing why you would want to use snowcap. It's a very cool medium, but it takes some getting used to. It takes a little love. Let me dry this real quick. All right. Just before I set it aside, I'm going to dry this while I'm here. Cool. Okay. Okay. Look at that. See, and as it dries, this is what I was saying about the undertones. the benefit of always throwing color on top instead of just, you know, being safe and just mixing your colors all the time is that you get those surprises. You're going to get those reveals where it almost has that electric vibe to it. Very cool. All right. So let's do some reveals. Again, these probably aren't totally cooked, but this demo needs to keep going, so that's what I'm going to do. All right. So next up, we're going to take this, and I'm going to peel this off. You would know that it's ready when you try to peel this, and it doesn't want to let go, right? So when it feels really sticky, then you know it's ready, right? When you peel it off and it's like, oh, it doesn't want to release from the paper, then you know it's ready to go, because that resin, remember, is going to kind of bond to it. But you're going to get the same, you'll get the, let's see if you can hear it. You kind of hear it. All right, so this is what we have for this background, right? Take a look at that. What's so cool about this effect is that the stencil still works as a stencil, right? But that ink wants to bead up around the edge. It can't permeate it because remember, we started with a little bit of alcohol, right? So that's what created kind of our surface tension. That surface tension is really important. But what happens is you get, see that cool little outline all the way around? That's what happens is the ink wants to get under the stencil, but it stops once it hits that little surface barrier, and then it's done. Then you just let it dry, and when you peel it off, it is magic. Now you'll notice on this, because we did so much ink, right? It is super shiny. These inks are resin based, as I've said throughout the demo. Sometimes if you have too much ink, the resin becomes kind of tacky. Use that to your advantage. If you have any type of gold foil, any kind of foil sheets, any kind of leafing is often even better because it's more sensitive. You can press foil or leafing onto those tacky areas and transfer the foil, and the metallic will stick to the resin, right? Now that's only going to happen where it's sticky, but if not, then you have a beautiful, cool background, right? But we're not done. We're not done with that because we still have what I told you, this. We have this very cool stencil. Now, here's what's crazy. I'll show you this. Look at the back of the stencil. You would expect the back of the stencil to be really a hot mess. It isn't. You can see in some areas where maybe you didn't have a lot of ISO that some of that color showed up, but most of our color is, well, on the top, right? Because that's where we were doing all of our dripping. So we're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to now take this. This is why I kept the gloves on. I wanted to stay suited up. And I'm going to spray the top of this stencil, the inked side, with isopropyl. But I think by now I'm probably out. So let me just quickly fill. I got it. Yeah, I don't know where we found it, but we found one that has like a flip top, which is super nice because you can just do a little funnel or whatever. But all right, there we go. Okay, put this over the top. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spray the inked side of the stencil with isopropyl. And what is that going to do? That's going to reactivate all the colors, right? That's what we want. We want it to do. So you see, nice layer of that. And then we're going to flip it and we're going to make a print. So some of you ask, like, can you use a negative? Can you do a print? Yes, 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 and yes. Obviously, I'll show you because remember I did the numbers. If you do something with numbers or letters and you flip it, well, you're going to get the reverse of that. Can you place a paper towel over this? Yes. Can you place your hand over this? Yes. Can we do another piece of Yupo? Yes, but I'll show you because most of the color is on the bottom that even if I press to make a transfer, you're going to see that you're going to get, I'll show you, minimal transfer because the ink is really under there. It's under the stencil. So I know, you know, initially you think, oh, I'm just going to have it. There's going to be so much I can keep printing. There's really not a lot there. And we can still use this Yupo, so don't think it's wasted. Yupo, you can use either side. But same rules apply. We want to place this down and we want to let this dry. If you take it off, it would be cool. It's going to start to bloom out and maybe I won't wait like I did the other ones. But for now, let me jump back to the number one. Wow, I just feel like I'm doing all these little magic tricks, right? So here we go. This one, see how I'm like, I'm not holding really the paper, but see how I'm like lifting my stencil and see how it's stuck on there. Remember, this was less, right? I didn't hose it like we did the other one. This has less alcohol ink than we did on this one. So the drying time, now you're going to hear this one. Do you hear it? There you go, I brought it closer to the mic. That sticky, that's what we want, but take a look at that. Holy moly, right? So the beauty of this one, so unlike dripping, remember this one was definitely more massaged. And I love the fact that I got the stencil effect where I was really pushing that ink out without a lot of liquid. That cool outline effect where there was a lot of ink and it just fades out. I mean, come on, that's a cool background. Something that we could stamp on, you could stamp on with archival, you can emboss, because that is dry. Now, can you go in and print with this? Absolutely, but keep in mind now, where's our ink? On this side. It's not on this side, right? It's on this side. So when I print, my numbers will be backwards, and that's okay. That is totally okay with me, right? I'll even do it on the dirty side, because sometimes it's just going to be serendipitous. You're going to get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, and you're going to be like, look at me. That's what I love. Now, could you add color to this? Could you essentially take a stencil, take an ink tool, stamp a bunch of ink on a stencil, and then print? Of course you can. You totally can. But I like the fact that we're kind of getting, I don't know, different effects by using just different elements. And that's really what I love about having the gloves. Because see what I'm doing? I'm kind of pushing, this one I'm kind of pushing some of that out. So I'm getting that isopropyl to kind of go into there. And if we want it to wick even more, there's nothing wrong with just spraying more isopropyl on this side, because remember, that's also going to start to absorb under there. See, look at some of those other colors coming out. Maybe it's from my glove, who knows, but I'm a happy guy with this. Okay, we're gonna set that one aside too. Grab a paper towel. Okay, pull this one up. Look at that, making a print and just letting it dry. Again, if you have a ceiling fan, if you have anything, cool air or a hairdryer, that will definitely speed up that drying time if you want to do it. But I encourage you, try not to get into that creative rut. Try not to always make with purpose, right? Because that's where, to me, I mean, I was that kind of maker where every time I got into my studio or my craft room, I was always making with purpose. I was making with a deadline, making because I needed a card, making because I needed to create this right away, for whatever it was. And it really took away the fun because I was in my head, because I knew I didn't have time. I knew it needed to be perfect. I knew I couldn't risk it looking like garbage. And that really just kind of limits the possibility. And so now I just play. And then you end up with things that you wouldn't know. And the confidence is like, well, how do you know? I don't know. I really don't know. I just do. People ask, what do you do to prep your video? I just put the product here. That's it. And we hope for the best, right? Mario's like, how long is it going to take? I'm like, well, I don't know. We'll have to see what's going on. Okay, let's bring this one back in, and we're going to grab the bubble wrap one too. All right, so this one probably isn't totally dry. Hasn't been 15 to 20 minutes, but again, I'm just going to go in just using a hairdryer just to kind of make sure it's somewhat dry. And let's see, right? So see how I don't have that sound? That's okay. Normally I would let it dry completely, but I'm not going to, because I'm just going to lift this off. Oh, sweet mother of ink glories. Now look what we have. You see those pools of ink? Okay, that's because it isn't dry, but that's okay. It's not going anywhere. It's dry for the most part. I'm gonna leave that. If you don't want it, because they're obviously going to dry a little bit darker, right? Because it's now liquid ink, more ink sitting on there. That's okay. I'm just going to take like a paper towel and I'm just going to blot off any of that excess ink so it dries a little bit more even. But hey, that's okay. I'm totally good with that, right? Can you make another print? Yes. Usually with this technique, you will get up to 4 prints from that same inking that you did if you dripped it on. Each one will be a lighter generation, but yes, you can keep going and you can keep going and you can keep going. And for this one, I'm going to keep going. This one, I'm going to do it though on translucent vellum. Translucent vellum is incredibly, I guess, underrated. I think that's what I want to say, because it is this, well, it's translucent, but it's still really cool. It doesn't have that sharp white background, but it's cool nonetheless. All right, let me take this. I'm going to spray the ink that's on this, and I'll spray it right over the background because maybe I'll get a good amount of ISO on there too. And then we'll place this down. A little print there. I'm going to spray this. Yeah, look at that. Could you go in with a brayer? Yes, but I'm going with my hands because see, by having that freedom to go in, it just has, I don't know, like a beautiful kind of watercolory look. And I'll dab off some of the sludge, because you do create a little sludge, but I'll show you this one as it's drying. Right? Neat. Okay, we'll let that one dry. And we'll bring this one in. See, multitask, look at that. Okay, so this one was the bubble wrap. Bubble wrap, saran wrap, if you have any kind of plastic wrap, oh, so cool. Because what we could have done, remember this was a finished background that we sprayed with alcohol, we laid our bubble wrap, and we let it dry. If you were gonna do plastic wrap, and again, I'll have that link because I demoed that in a previous video, you would spray your background with isopropyl, take plastic wrap, wrinkle it up, let it dry, and you're gonna get kind of a cool crackly effect. But this one, let's see if this is dry. You hear it? Oh yeah, then we know it's dry. Ah, look at those. Very good. Not totally dry, see those wet ones? That's okay, I'm gonna leave that there. Could we then take this, spray this with alcohol and print on a background? Of course you could, we have the technology, so you can use this and spray and print and do all sorts of amazing things. And the beauty of working with alcohol ink is that you just get to keep going and going. And I'll even show you one other thing. I'll even do this background. So what's great about this, you can see those kind of crisp outlines. Remember when I said alcohol ink will always react with itself? And I know some people would do this and be like, oh, but that's perfect, I want to leave it as is. You can, right? But if we go in and take this and spray it with alcohol, now it's going to react everything. It's going to take these definite lines and it's going to soften them. It's going to create kind of a more of a blurry watercolor effect, but that's okay. I like it. So we're going to let it sit for a minute. You see how it almost like it blurs out a bit? You can let it air dry if you want, or we can go in and dry it. And all that did, you'll see, it just changed the entire background from kind of a very focused print to a very kind of beaded print. I want to try one other idea. I've never tried this before, but I'm about to in a second because that's just who I am. But this creates, I think, almost more of a tapestry look. That's the word I'm going for. You see how it changed from having those really thin lines to a tapestry look? A cool background, nonetheless. That may not be your thing. You may be like, oh no, Tim, I liked it when it's clean. Cool, but trying it out, you're going to be able to know what works and what doesn't, which is what I'm going to do right now because I've never tried it. But I just thought, I'm like, I wonder, what if, remember how I did that little sparkly paper and I let it drip? What would happen if I did it with this? Would the whole design go away? Would some of it stay? I don't know. Let's find out together. I think I should have enough in there. Let's see in a second. Ooh, I'm out of juice. Get some in. You gotta get some ISO in there quick. Okay, I'm gonna tell you that I don't think it's gonna work just by first appearances, but I don't know. Because right now, it looks like a really sad background, but who knows? I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, not willing to give up. Let's see. I agree. And Antipa's like, I love experiments. That is, it really, if you're still not doing that as a maker, if you've not tried it, you're missing out, in my opinion, on the core part of being a maker. Answering the what if yourself, right? There is definitely an entire world out there. I mean, you're watching a video right now on the very thing of demo. There is something about learning. Absolutely. We thrive on knowledge. But if you always have a fear of trying it yourself, you miss out on that what if discovery. That's really what it is. Actually, this is kind of turning out way better than I thought. Because look at how as it's drying, you see how that swirl is kind of coming into focus, but totally different because now it looks like it's just behind, like, I don't know, just these colorful drips. I'm gonna let this air dry. I'm good with it. I mean, I still prefer the initial one, I'm not gonna lie. I prefer the initial print, but this to me is not, it's not a goner. I'll still do something with it. Okay. Let's see, is this one done? Then we're gonna move on to glitter and resin, and then, oh, there we go. Yeah, look at that. What a cool print, right? All right, so speaking of print, a lot of people talk about jelly print. I don't really do much with a gel plate, not to say that I'm not trying, because I am, and I do plan on doing some videos on gel print, but there are a lot of amazing, amazing people out there. In fact, I'll even link a few today in my Instagram story of those that specifically use alcohol ink on a jelly plate, which can do incredibly amazing, brilliant things. But I'm not going to focus on that because I really haven't figured that out too well yet. All right. So a couple other things is we will talk about substrates. We're going to talk about sealers, and we're going to talk about resin a little bit. So substrates. The very beginning, I talked about non-porous surfaces, and so I want to just explain that whole thing. So non-porous surfaces, when we're talking about Yupo and we're talking about plasticky things, sometimes there's going to be that substrate that you as a maker want to use alcohol ink on. That might be a fabric book, that might be an art journal page, that might be a wooden box, a picture frame that you picked up or that you had that you want to revamp. And you're like, but it's not made out of this stuff. Can I still use alcohol ink? You can. And here are some tricks. So this is just a piece of, this is one of the etc. tags from Stampers Anonymous. This is not about the tag, okay? This has nothing to do with the substrate. It's merely just a piece of paperboard, but it shows you that there's nothing more porous than paperboard, right? Like that's just what it is. Yet you can use alcohol ink on this substrate, right? You can get it to do all those little spots. You can get it to blend with air. Well, how? Well, many different mediums will actually prime or seal a porous surface, allowing you to use your alcohol inks. And this is where you can take a framed panel that you might have, or maybe you have a vignette box from Ideology, or maybe you have one of these etc. tags. These are from Stampers Anonymous. They come in all different sizes, but you might want to alcohol ink a big background, something bigger than a tile. So here are your different options that I've had luck with. Now, you may want to try out different things. Go for it. You do you. But this is what I've had luck with. First one is gesso. Now, my gesso of choice, Dina Wakley Media. To me, I like it. It doesn't have so much tooth. Sometimes gessos are almost too chalky, and that doesn't allow the alcohol inks to play. So I'm not going to say all gessos because this is the only one I've tried. But you might have one. You might want to give it a try. Okay, so the cool thing about gesso is that's going to provide a very white, a very nice background to really highlight the color. The next one is collage medium. Okay, collage medium could also be gel medium. I haven't really tried Mod Podge. I'm not a fan of that just because to me it gets very sticky. But collage medium or gel medium on a substrate also seals the surface. Now, the big difference though is if you look right here, see where it's almost black? This is just putting collage medium over the substrate. This is no different than using alcohol ink on black cardstock. See where it doesn't have any color? That blue almost looks black because what is underneath it? Brown. So if you're going to use collage medium, my advice is to base coat it with something, whether that's white paint, whether that's white ink, whatever it is, and then put your collage medium because you still want that white foundation to act as your light source for these translucent colors. Now, this to me is if you didn't have any of these other ones, right? Because these other ones are a one-step where this is a two-step. I got to base coat a color, then I have to put collage medium. Gosh, it's like Stampers Anonymous. I say a word and they throw up a link. Okay, you don't have to buy everything. Really, these are things that you probably most likely have, right? So the next one is just acrylic paint. Nothing special about these acrylic paints other than these are the ones I use, but this would work with any kind of acrylic paint, okay? White or metallic. White acrylic paint, because an acrylic is going to act as a waterproof sealer. You can put white acrylic paint, then you can alcohol ink on it, and you wait for the medium to dry. Metallic paint, well, that's pretty awesome because the silver is still going to act as your light source, but it's going to allow, see that metallic sheen under the alcohol ink? Ooh, very, very cool, right? A whole different look to that. I love the effect of that. So metallic paint, white gesso, collage medium. Do I notice a difference? Personally, I do. I find that acrylic paints are going to act more similar to Yupo. Because of that acrylic nature, like when it dries, it just allows the inks a little bit more playtime than gesso. Although gesso works, you can see here that the movement of the ink is much more fluid than gesso or even collage medium. But it does show that you have options, and this is all the same ink color, right? Very cool. That's all Monsoon on there. So those are just some options on substrates. Other substrates that you can use alcohol inks on are embellishments that you probably have in your creative space, right? Maybe you have different colors of glitter. Maybe you have different mica flakes. Maybe you have beads. Maybe you have sequins. Maybe you have brads. Any kind of embellishments you can customize with your alcohol ink, okay? You can do that. Now, when it comes to working with all of these elements to customize, you need to make sure that it's inkable, right? So I would always test a little bit before you just kind of go into it and create this. These are things, again, I've shared this a lot more in detail in previous videos, so I won't go into too much detail, but I use distressed glitter, which is just a clear glitter. It looks white, but it's actually translucent. Looks like sugar. And we alcohol ink, and we turn this glitter into all of these glitters. And the beauty of having all these colors of glitter is this is not metallic glitter, right? So in a shaker card, it is translucent. If you put it over a stamped image, you can still see the lines of your image underneath it, versus traditional glitter is usually a metallic mylar and it is opaque. These are all translucent. Another one is distressed mica flakes. Now these are synthetic mica flakes. This is not like mined mica. It's synthetic. It's a man-made mica, but it looks just like vintage mica. But I love this, that it is more cost-effective than real mica. I love the fact that it does have that really kind of imperfection when it comes to particle size and the little flecks in there. But how beautiful to create all these different colors of mica. And mica is awesome for different shaker cards because you can create just the most beautiful colors by using alcohol inks to tint your mica flakes. And I'll show you real quick how to just do one. We'll probably just do glitter. These are storage jars. Ranger sells them. They're distressed storage jars. And then I just put them in a crayon tin because that's how I like to keep my stuff. But here's how simple it is to work with. Let's just do a glitter, right? You want to take a disposable cup. You want to have, and so these are just repurposed cups that we've had. A craft stick. Take either one of your ingredients. We just happen to do glitter. We're going to pour some in. We're going to take some alcohol ink. Let's see, let's do moss. That would be beautiful. You're going to squirt some in. How much? Just squirt some in. You can always add more. No need for blending solution. No need for isopropyl. It just looks clumpy. You're going to take your stick and you're just going to start stirring it up. And as you stir it, it's going to look like wet sand. You can see on my hands. I hope it's not making you dizzy. If it is, look away. But you need to keep stirring it because what we're doing is we're coating all of those granules with alcohol ink. So again, this could be done with beads. This could be sequins that you have. You know, maybe you have white or whatever. But normally I do this off camera because I know it gets people pretty dizzy. But the point is you have to keep mixing this until you don't see any dark clumps. If you see dark clumps, you see that little dark spot, you need to mix it because that's actually a drop of alcohol ink. There we go. Now once, oh, there we go. I just saw another one. Once it's all mixed up, it's going to look like wet sand. It's not going to look like really much of anything. Same with the mica. But once you let it dry, it will go back to a perfectly dry glitter. It will not have this texture. So I like to pour it out on a paper towel because that's the quickest way to get the moisture to wick out. Okay. You could leave it in the cup if you want to, but I just think it's easier on a paper towel. And honestly, in about, I don't know, 5 minutes. I mean, you could see it already. It's starting to come back to life as a glitter, but it will become the same exact consistency, viscosity of your regular glitter. It's not sticky. It's not clumpy. It's nothing. It's perfect glitter. And it's the same thing with mica or anything else. It's just about putting the ink in there, stirring it until you don't see any clumps, and then letting it air dry. Okay. That is it. That's the cool part of just kind of mixing all that stuff up. Okay, gosh, look at all this stuff that we have. Oh, see? What's that?
Crafter mat.
Ooh, that's so good. I still like that. Okay.
And you still have tons of stuff you haven't even got to.
A little bit. A couple things. I'll probably wrap this up in just a bit. All right, let's lift this one off. Oh, man. See? Look at that print. I love that one. Right? Still a little wet there, but I love that. And these, I would just, again, just put alcohol, right? I'd probably pour some isopropyl in like a little tray, my lasagna pan, so it's not very deep. This way I can put all my stencils in it. But yeah, I agree. The storage jars are one of my favorites. I saw a lot of comments. Now, this stuff, this deli paper, very cool stuff. because yes, you can use this, you can peel this apart, you can collage with it, you can, you know, decoupage with it. So that's kind of another bonus. I mean, that is a very cool frame for a card, right? Cut this out, use your gel medium, right? Do this. I know Natifa could put these on her envelopes to just do cool stuff. And that's another thing, like an envelope, right? You're not gonna have an envelope out of Yupo, but you can take an envelope and you can paint it with white paint or metallic, and now you can alcohol ink that substrate. And that's the beauty of working with different substrates to get different effects. I'm just looking over my table right now of all the different things that I did earlier, just to kind of show you that the longer they kind of dry and do their thing, the cooler it is. All right, so we'll talk about sealing. A lot of people get very caught up in the world of sealing their work. And we talk about this a lot with distress ink, right? People want to seal distress. That's a whole nother topic. A lot of people want to seal alcohol ink. Now, alcohol inks have always been designed for an art/craft medium. That's really what they were for. They are not designed for food grade kind of things, right? So people that want to do wine glasses and things like that, they are not designed to be food safe and put in the dishwasher. You could certainly tint the stems of a wine glass. There are people that do coasters. They do all sorts of things. If you get into that arena, you want to do coasters, tumblers. So many people are using alcohol ink and resin on tumblers. My advice is to go on YouTube and learn from people that have actually spent years perfecting their craft. Many of them share their tips and tricks. Some of them, it's a little bit more proprietary, but you can certainly find education out there if you want to do that specifically. Again, I'll share something in my story. Ashley, I believe, shared a really great tutorial and some tips on how she seals her artwork. Usually you can use a spray sealer like a Kmar varnish. There's also UV resistant spray, but there are tricks to that because remember, alcohol ink is a solvent. So if you spray a solvent propellant on it, you can often react the inks. So there are tricks. And again, I'll share that link in my Instagram story today. So if you're one of those people that want to seal even your Yupo artwork, there'll be some tricks on that. If I'm going to seal something, I love to seal in resin because it just brings out this look of alcohol ink that you don't normally get. You can use a variety of different brands of resin. There is not just one brand that is specific to working with alcohol ink. You can use, bless you, you can use whatever it is that you like. This is a kit with Ranger. This is Ranger's resin. This is not my resin, but it works with alcohol ink. So that's why they just have it in an alcohol ink package. But this is Ranger's resin. It is a 2-part resin. You just mix equal parts, stir it in a cup, just like traditional resin. But when you pour it over your alcohol ink, it doesn't react with the colors, which is nice. The cool thing about that is that you can really create just these beautiful finished pieces. This is one of those hardcore panels that has a layer of resin. This happens to be you can see some lifting in there that we did. This is another one. So this is kind of that drippy technique I shared with that sparkly paper. This is another hardcore panel with resin. And these are great because, again, this could be a coaster. This could be an art installation, right? You can make a lot of different panels, and maybe you're going to hang these resin tiles on your wall. I just think there is something about resin, but like any other art medium, find a resin that you like to work with, that works for you. Definitely follow the safety instructions on there because when you're dealing with resin, there are a lot of variables, everything from work surface to ventilation and all that, but it is a very cool medium that is worth kind of perfecting. I just like this because this kept it very simple for me because a lot of other resins, you know, just more quantity than I would ever use as a maker, and you can create quite a bit out of this. All right, so with that, let's talk about some other things. I'm just going to clean this up. I'm also, when all this is done, I know a lot of you have been commenting, so thank you for that, and posting some questions. I've been glancing up as much as I can to answer, but we'll still do some Q&A at the end of this when I wrap it up. But with alcohol ink, you see, you kind of have to you got to keep going if you want everything to flow through there. All right, let me just wipe this off. So I'm going to share one other tip. I've been doing a lot of demos. Thank you guys for always watching the demos. I like to just play like this. You can see that it's just kind of my jam to get stuff out and to just play around with the what if, right? Some stuff is going to be great. Some stuff, maybe it's not so great. But I do get asked a lot, like, what do you do with all your stuff? Normally, I don't get into that because I say you do you. What I do may not work for you, but I'm a very compartmental thinker, believe it or not. Even though when I'm demoing, I'm kind of all over the place. But when it comes to how I keep my creative space organized, I need to have a system. Otherwise, it just becomes just an entire area of chaos. So what I do is, this is my storage basket, right? Whatever storage you have. But in my storage basket, I have a series of tins. Now, these tins are not meant for this purpose, shocker, but this is my favorite tin. You saw me use it for the glitter and mica. So this is the distress storage tin for crayons, right? It's the same one that fit those jars, but it's really designed for the distressed crayons. But it's like the perfect tin. What do I use it for? I use it for all of my backgrounds. So the cool thing is it fits number 8 tags. You know I'm the mayor of Tag Town. It is the perfect size for tags. So every tag that I've demoed, well, here they are. They're all right here. Maybe something is finished, maybe something's not, maybe it's texture paste, maybe it's stamped, maybe it's sprayed, maybe it's eroded metallic from when we did salvage patina. Whatever it is, if I haven't used it on something, I can just throw it in a tin. And this way, if I'm looking to die cut something, I've got something to organize, especially if I want tags. Now, my other system is like backgrounds, okay? So I have a tin just for card backgrounds. These are backgrounds that pretty much are card front size, great for die cutting. Again, you might recognize when we did the glaze, right? Sometimes I've done metallics. So there's no rhyme or reason, but they are great card front. So I use this, let's say I'm gonna die cut. I just like to go in and grab backgrounds that are already done and just cut away. I don't want to have to sit there and think about a background to then what am I going to die cut. These are things, and not everything is a beauty, right? This is just when we were demoing kind of a ink pad, I think, or maybe it was a brayer. I don't even remember now, or it was an embossed piece of paper, or it was just stamping. So some stuff is great, but it's all right there and it's easy and it holds a ton. Alcohol ink, like we just did. I like to keep my alcohol ink stuff separate because it has its own look and feel. But the cool thing about this is we've got some great backgrounds. Here's a background with the alloys that we did in some of the previous videos. You'll probably see like bubble wrap. That's an alcohol pearl. Like, look at the pearl in there. Cool background. There's lift ink, right, when we did some stamping. And I might organize them by that, right? I might kind of, you know, I'm a bit OCD, so I might put like all my lift ink ones together, but I can still organize in a tin and still be inspired to just kind of flip through them. There's some stamped backgrounds with the embossing, instant cards, right? So when I'm creating, I still, even if I'm stamping, I'm not making a card. I'm just playing around with stamps that day. But now when I need a card, I can crack out one of these tins, stick it on a card base, zippity-do, I'm done, right? It's just out there. So here's some backgrounds with resist spray. Oh, look at this one. That's that technique I shared with you. So here shows a lot of different prints that we were able to get from that stencil, right? Now that you've seen how it's done, right? That's the first stencil, the second stencil, the third stencil, and this is one where instead of spraying the stencil, I sprayed the Yupo to get a really cool watercolor effect. But look at all those backgrounds from one inking of a stencil. So cool. Bubble wrap, right? Bubble wrap, bubble wrap, bubble wrap, right? This one was stamped in bubble wrap. So this was like, took it off of this one, it was still wet, stamped it on this one, created some effect. Metallic papers, oh, look at all those little drips, right? There's a grungy drip, there's a rainbow drip. So this one, instead of like randomly inking like I did in today's demo, I inked that color in more horizontal stripes, and then when you spray it, then you get that rainbow blend, right? Just playing around with the what ifs. This, someone asked about cardstocks. So these, believe it or not, these are my Ideology metallic craft stock. So this is craft paper, but because it's printed in a metallic ink, look at that. So this is alcohol ink. I don't know if you can see all those colors. Look at those beautiful colors. This is just done on silver. It could be over any of the metallics, but they take the inks beautifully. And then back here, we've got some lift. There's a little rainbowy one I was playing around with. Oh, here's some tiles without resin, right? Where are those resin ones? Here we go. Here's a good comparison. Like, look at the difference that resin does to the colors. See what I mean? Like, if you have the right kind of resin, it will make your alcohol ink colors like, holy moly. And you could put it over your stamps, your archival, you can do it over any of that. But I love the comparison. And sometimes I'll just keep stuff just to see it, right? Like I noticed on this one, okay, the resin, yeah, it was the same pink. And so the resin just kind of lightened that pink a little bit. So I learned that I could spray this with a sealer before I do the resin, and then my colors, and it didn't, you can see it didn't impact any other colors other than that pink. So there must be something in the dye that the resin didn't like, but I still like it. But it was very cool to explore and experiment. Look at that one with lift ink. Fun. But see, all those things, all these pieces just house in, even my tiles, house in a tin. And then I have a tin that's just filled with little, you know, jibbity bits. You know, just little, just things that I've done, you know, paper dolls, or you've seen when we've done the crayons, or if I've embossed, or when we did the shaping tool. It's just a whole bunch of embellishments, because I say the same thing. Like, this is one of the backgrounds with Yupo, one of those stencils, but we die cut it. So, hey, maybe I'm just going to shape it, you know, and then I'm going to put them on a card. So I can go through here and just embellish all sorts of cards without having to do it. And that is my, I don't know, that is just my system, because it's compartmental, because all this was creative play. All of this was creative play. And now when I need to make, making is just as fun, because making is like shopping, right? I'm shopping for a background. I'm shopping for a stamped image. I'm shopping for this, because these are all things that I've done, and I can make cards. I can sit down for a couple hours and make cards, or make collage panels, or make a journal page with all these components that I've already done. And I have all these pieces that I can mix and match, and it works for me. It may not work for you. You might be one of those start to finish people, and you do you. You have to ultimately do what works for you, but please do it. Just do something, because that's, I need to add these, our new pieces. I'm going to add those to my alcohol ink tin. But yeah, do it, because I think that the more you do, you're going to build that level where everything that you do is going to be fun, right? And I do like tins. I like something that, I like to keep something a bit shallow. I don't want something super deep. I don't want to dig through buckets and drawers and barrels, because it's getting lost. And some type of organization, it's organized chaos, but it still works for my brain. So yes, do I have a tin when I do Halloween backgrounds and Christmas? Yes, I do. Yep, when I get into a holiday season, I'll do the same thing with my tins. Like, these are great seasonal backgrounds. This is great for, you know, you might get very themey. So I'll stop babbling and we'll do some questions. How do we do on the demo? Pretty good, Mario?
Really good.
I thought it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean,
You really had a good time.
hopefully you were just inspired. Again, 2-ounce alcohol ink, it still may not be your jam, but once you start playing, once you start playing, I think it will be. I mean, this is, again, a test from Ranger, where they're just seeing, you know, do people want more than, you know, a small bottle of alcohol ink? Well, I think if you use it in the way that I showed you, and you kind of get in that zone, definitely. All right.